Doesn't seem to want to work.
All right, Jeff Summers, you all ready to go?
Yes, I think so.
Okay. All right, it is 6:50. We have a full quorum here, so why don't we start the meeting? Thanks everyone for calling in. I would like to call to order the Town of Cohasset Conservation Commission meeting. This is a Zoom virtual meeting. Today is Thursday. I think it's Thursday, July 23rd, 2020. The time is now 6:50. We got off to a little late start here. Originally scheduled on the agenda was supposed to be 6:30, 75 Border Street. We had an issue with the public notice. The 75 Border Street application will be heard for approximately about 7:40 this evening, right after Howard Gleason Road. In attendance this evening, this is all being done by Zoom platform. We have our conservation agent, Jeffrey Summers, our conservation administrator, Angela Giso, commissioners, myself, Jay Pimpare. We'll do this all by roll call so that everyone's there. We'll go right down the list. James Roseback, James, could you just state your name and present, please, and we'll go through the list of individuals, commissioners here this evening. James.
James Roseback, present.
Chris.
Chris McFarland here.
Eric.
Eric Eisenhower, present.
Marianne.
Marianne Weatherald, present.
Alex.
Alex Coinas, present.
And our associate who just joined us, Kathleen Bergen. Kathy, could you just, Kathleen, just say that you're present this evening, please? We're just doing a quick roll call.
Kathy Berrigan, present.
Great, thank you. So we do have a full quorum this evening. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 voting members and our associate, Kathleen. Okay, moving right along here. First item of business is we're going to go right to 655. It's 807 CJC Highway. This is a notice of intent 20-07, stormwater permit 20-17. This is a redevelopment, retail redevelopment. This is a continuation from July 9th. We had previously heard from the applicant on this notice of intent and stormwater. There have been some revisions to the project. And Jeff Summers, if you could, I think what would probably be best here, Jeff, I'm going to have you share your screen tonight so we can have the annotation and not myself here because it's not on my computer yet. If you could kindly pull up the site plan or the mitigation plantings and the planting plan for 807 CJC, that would probably be great.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't see Jeff Hassett here yet.
Okay. That complicates things.
I did talk to him earlier today, and he does know that we're starting at 6:55.
Okay.
So do you want to just wait a minute until he,
Yeah.
oh, here he is. He just showed up.
Yep. Okay, great. Move him right up to a panelist. All right, great.
Yep, there we go. Okay.
Jeff Hassett, welcome. We got started a minute or so ago here, and I just introduced the application. As you know, this is 807 CJC Highway. Jeff Summers is going to be sharing his screen momentarily here. As you know, this was a continuation from July 9th. We did see the revised plan, revised mitigation plan, buffer zone enhancement plan. And when Jeff pulls that up, we can go off of that. But in the meantime, Jeff Hassett, I will turn it over to you if you could introduce yourself. And by the way, I just want to make a note to the general public here. If there are any questions at all during the course of the evening, please submit them through the Q&A. The Q&A box is down the bottom of your screen. While you're all in pretty much, you're in listening mode here. If any of the attendees need to be moved up, we will move you up to a panelist so that you can speak. I will leave that at discretion up to our agent, Jeff Summers, who's in contact with all of you regarding who will be speaking for each one of the applications this evening. So I appreciate you all calling in, and when your time comes, your application is up, you will be moved up to a panelist so that you can speak. But again, in the meantime, if there are any questions or comments to the public, please do that through the Q&A box. And don't wait until the application is over, please. If you have them in advance, please do that. So again, I will turn it back over to Jeff Hassett to reintroduce this application that's a continuance. So take it away. And Jeff Hassett, we also have a Zoom annotation here that Jeff Summers is going to be running, so we can kind of move around and highlight specific areas, which we hadn't been able to do in the past. So just want to let you know about that feature.
Okay, great. All right, so thank you, Jay, and
Jeff?
thank you for waiting for me.
Jeff, before we begin, one question.
Yeah.
Jeff Summers,
Yes.
I can't read your chart. Is there any way you can increase the clarity? It's very fuzzy.
Yeah, I can enlarge it in like steps, so I can do that.
No, it's still very fuzzy. Well,
Yeah.
we'll have to work on it
There
outside
it
of
goes.
the meeting. So
There it
that's
is.
better. Yeah, that's good.
It takes a
That's
second to load when you zoom in.
Okay, that's good. That's fine. Thank you.
And sorry to interrupt again, but if there is a problem, we'll go back to the old school method of me just sharing my screen. I just won't have the Zoom annotation.
That's fine, Jay. That's good.
Okay. All right. So Jeff Hassett here on behalf of the applicant. If you recall, this project was approved in 2015, amended in 2016, and then the permits expired before they did any work. So we've resubmitted at the last hearing, the exact same plan. The only change on this plan is the back area where we're enhancing the wetland buffer. And in the back also, there was a question about what the wetland line did, how the BVW connected to the mean high water. And it was flagged by Brad Holmes at the time, but we didn't show it because the enhancement area and any work at all in the back was kind of an afterthought and kind of added at the last minute. But in his notes, and it's clear in the field, from that last flag shown, the wetland line of the BVW continues right alongside the mean high water. So the other thing you asked us to look into was you wanted to see if we could do anything more to improve the enhancement area. This is not a mitigation for any work that we were proposing. It was just an area where we saw an encroachment and we thought we should probably enhance that area and get some plants in there. So what we're proposing now are jersey barriers along the edge of the asphalt. I'll note that beyond the edge of the asphalt, there's quite a bit of gravel area where they have all sorts of debris. They're parking cars. So at the edge of the pavement is where the jersey barrier will go in. Anything beyond there will be cleaned up. They're going to put down a loam and a seed mix, which we didn't specify in the past, and then plant it. We increased the number of plantings from 16 to 30. So with that, I think it's about as dense as an enhancement as we can. And we're getting everything back to the asphalt, and the barrier will prevent future encroachments.
Great, thank you, Jeff. Jeff Summers, any quick comments on this? I know that obviously, as Jeff just mentioned, it's a revised enhancement plan has been brought forth. Any further comment?
So just the other actual environmental improvements here are just to kind of go back to the last meeting, is the removal of the cesspool, putting in an actual septic system. They're also proposing a rain garden to help treat water coming off the parking lot before it enters the wetland. And then again, this improved planting area.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, obviously, clearly, the septic system alone is a significant improvement over the old cesspool that was previously there. And thank you, Jeff Hassett, for taking our recommendations and putting in more enhanced wetland buffer area there. And I do see the proposed mitigation plant legend at the top there as well. Let me turn it over to the commission. Any comments from the commission? I know there was some significant comment as a result of the last hearing. I just want to make sure the applicant has hopefully addressed that, or any further comment.
You know, Jay, if you look at the plants, they're all from our native plant list, all right? it's easy to moan and groan as to why a 2-foot can't be a 3-foot. But I think in general, we have to be patient here, and the 2-foot plants probably have a better chance of surviving in any case. I don't imagine this is going to be a highly maintained area, given where it's located. So yeah, there are local plants, there are native plants, and the size would indicate they're going to be durable.
Yeah, and considering that this is basically the village greenery site, I would like to think that the plants will be professionally installed and maintained in that area. Any further comment from the commission?
Yeah, Jay, I'll just mention too that, one of the standard conditions is that any plants associated with the order of conditions survive for 3 years. So they would have to guarantee that these survive for 3 years at a minimum.
Right.
There's no irrigation, is there, Jeff?
No, there isn't.
Okay. But and that's really the advantage of having what I call native plants. They should be able to survive in the summer, where they tend to slow down in this environment without having external irrigation. So it would be the tougher type of plants. So that's good.
They're out there with the hose every day watering the plants in the nursery. They could hit these as well, but there won't be an installed irrigation system.
Okay.
Right, yeah, again, I think if anyone's concerned about the plants, I would like to think that Village Greenery is gonna just water these plants as well. It's literally on the site.
Right.
Further comment from the commission? Any questions from the audience? I'm not seeing any questions from the audience through the Q&A. Okay, well, not hearing any more comment, I think that this is a significant improvement from the original application as stated there with the the removal of the old cesspool and now a full septic system in place, buffer enhancement, the storage container to be removed, which was basically pretty much in the wetland itself, and among other things are a huge improvement to the site. So I'm in favor of moving this forward. So with that, to move these things along, Jay Pampara would like to make a motion to issue a variance for work within the 50-foot buffer zone at 807 CJC Highway.
Second.
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second by Mr. Eisenhower, all those in favor, we'll do this by roll call vote. Please say aye. Jay Pampare, aye. Chris?
Chris McFarland, aye.
James?
James Rosback, aye.
That was a long one.
It sounds like he's in a submarine.
Eric?
Aye, aye.
Marion?
Aye.
And Alex?
Alex Coenis, aye.
Great. Okay, Jay Pampare would like to make a motion to issue an order of conditions for the project 8807 CJC Highway. Do we hear a second?
Second.
Aye.
Second by Chris McFarland, I believe. Let's, all those in favor, please state your name and say aye by roll call vote. Jay Pampare, aye. Chris?
Chris McFarland, aye.
James?
James Rosback, aye.
Eric?
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Marianne?
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
Alex Coenis, aye.
And lastly, we need a stormwater permit. Jay Pampare make a motion to issue a stormwater permit for 807 CJC Highway. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Sounded like a second by Chris McFarland. We'll do this by roll call vote. Jay Pampare, aye. Chris?
Chris McFarland, aye.
James?
James Rosback, aye.
Eric?
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Marianne?
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
And Alex?
Alex Coenis, aye.
Great. Congratulations. That vote passes 6-0.
Justin,
Yes.
did you want to include the condition that Jeff mentioned about the 3-year minimum? Or is that part of the boilerplate?
I don't think we need, I appreciate that. I don't think we need to because that should be in all our orders of standard order of conditions here.
I didn't know if it was part of the boilerplate or if it was something that had to be put in.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
No problem.
Okay, we do have a couple of minutes before the next hearing. I'm going to jump to the actual minutes of approval so that we can get a couple things out of the way here. And we'll wait till the exact time, 7:10, before we start with 100 Nichols Road. But Jeff Summers, if you want to get 100 Nichols Road all queued up as
Yes.
far as the site plan, et cetera. And you know what, I'm happy to share the photos too, Jeff. If we get to a point where you want to do a share screen and I can go back to the photos, or if you want to do it too, that's fine.
Okay.
Anyway, so let's just jump to the minutes. I'm making executive decision to move them up. I did review the minutes of June 11th and 7/9. I had a very minor comment on the June 11th minutes. I didn't have anything on July 9th. We will not be moving forward with May 14th minutes tonight. They're still in draft, but June 11th and July 9th are ready to go. Does anybody have any comment or comments or concerns with the minutes of June 11th or July 9th?
No.
I did not.
Great. Okay, I will make Jay Pampari would like to make a motion to approve the minutes of June 11th and July 9th. And again, with the stipulation that since we're doing this all remotely, the chair will not be signing the minutes and our agent Jeffrey Summers will be signing the minutes for us. So make a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Second by Marianne Weatherald. I'll do this by roll call vote quickly. Just please state your name and yay, nay. For the record, Jay Pampari, aye. Chris?
You're silent, Chris. You're mute.
Chris McFarland, aye.
James?
James Roseback, aye.
Eric?
Eric Eisenhower, aye.
Marianne?
Marianne Weatherald, aye.
Alex?
Alex Coinness, aye.
Great, that vote passes 6-0. So we will move the minutes of May 14th to the next agenda, till the next hearing of August 6th. Give another minute here before we jump into Nichols Road. Jeff, do we have everybody from 100 Nichols Road present? Do you want to move them up, or do you want me to move them up? I can do that.
I know it's Jeff Hassett again. I don't know if anybody else is present.
I think, he's still here. Yep, great. Okay. Jeff Hassett, was there anybody else that needed to be moved up to a panelist regarding this application?
Yeah, if Sean Papich is on the line, if you could add
He
him.
is. Yep, I can move him up.
And I don't know if the applicant, Jason Culpa, is on the line, but if so.
I do see a Jason. But there's no last name. I just see a Jason. Sometimes people, when they log on, they just put their name. Jason has raised his hand here, I believe. Jason, let me move. Do you want to promote him to a panelist so he can speak, Jeff?
Yeah, give me 1
Yes,
second to get back.
we'll speak. I'll present the project, but yeah, you may as well.
Okay. So I have Jeff Hassett, Sean Papich, and I have Jason as well. So just for if anybody is not speaking, we've got 13 panelists on now. If anyone's not speaking, just please put your phone or your computer on mute. That really helps out with the sound here. And then when it is, if you are asked to speak or requested to speak here, just obviously hit the mute button. Jeff Summers, you almost ready to go? Jeff, you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I muted myself. Yeah, I think I have the site plan and the photos ready to go. I don't know if you need to see anything else.
All right, you want to load them up and I'll read into the record the notice of public hearing here.
Sure.
Okay, so in accordance, it is now 7:10. In accordance with Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 131, Section 40, the Cohasset Wetlands Bylaw and the Cohasset Stormwater Bylaw, the Cohasset Conservation Commission will hold a public hearing on Thursday, July 23rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. via remote participation on a Zoom platform for Notice of Intent 20-18 and Stormwater Permit 20-24 to reconstruct a garage and driveway, remove a tennis court, and construct a new barn with associated landscape and hardscape for property at 100 Nichols Road. Jason Culpa, applicant. The public is invited to offer public input on this application by writing, by email to J. Summers at cohassamass.org in advance of the public hearing. Can also attend the meeting via the Zoom platform, etc. So with that, I am going to turn it over to the applicant here and just refresh everyone's memory. You may remember this site because it was in front of us not too long ago. Probably, I don't know, earlier, I guess it was over the winter time now. Maybe even going back to the fall. Nevertheless, this is a project that was in front of the commission not too long ago, and they are proposing some changes out there now. So I would turn it over to the applicant at this point. Jeff Hassett, are you there?
Oh,
There you go.
My apologies.
No
Again,
problem.
For the record, Jeff Hassett, on the line, Sean Papish with landscape architect and the applicant Jason Culpa. We filed a notice of intent and a stormwater permit for improvements at this property at 100 Nichols Road. The property is 3.8 acres in size. It's developed with a single family home that was built in 1895. And there are a number of improvements that are proposed on the property. Jeff, if you don't mind, if you could, can you point to items as we talk about them? So the first part of the project will be rebuilding the garage. Currently, there's a garage that's connected to the main portion of the house by a narrow breezeway. That will be demolished and now reconstructed, attached more to the principal portion of the house. Now, so secondly, they are repaving and reconfiguring the driveway. The driveway will be in the same general location, but you can see it at the front door. It's now more of a rectangular shape as opposed to a circle, and then reconfiguring the driveway to work with the new garage location. Immediately behind the garage is currently a tennis court, and that tennis court will be removed, and in its place will be constructed a swimming pool with an associated pool shack, patios around it, walkways, and landscaping. So a full pool area in that location. In the backyard, currently they have a retaining wall right there, which gives them a bit of a flat yard. The proposal is to remove that wall and construct a new larger wall in order to give them more of a usable large flat backyard. Next, they are proposing a barn on the other side of the property. The barn is 30 by 60. It'll be constructed on a slab foundation. So the intent there would be to not remove any ledge, or if so, just a minimal amount. And then working back to the middle of the property, they're proposing a garden area with a shed and a chicken coop. So as far as stormwater mitigation, currently there's really no stormwater mitigation on the property at all. The front yard slopes towards the abutting property to the right on the page, or to the south. And the rear portion of the property slopes back to a BVW. That's a BVW associated with Little Harbor. It's up gradient of Little Harbor. So the wetland is shown in blue, and the 50-foot buffer is in red, and the 100-foot buffer is in green. Going back to stormwater mitigation, along the base of the retaining wall in the backyard, there'll be a stone trench. So that's 240 feet long. And then capturing, really the more critical location is this area over by the barn that Jeff is pointing out right now, because water does concentrate next to that adjacent house. So in the original filing, we had a stone trench. We've made that stone trench twice as long and twice as wide at the request of the neighbor and Jeff Summers. And if you'll notice, there's also a roof drywall system. So all of the downspouts will go to a drywall. That was in the front yard. So if and when it overtopped, it was more in the critical area. So by relocating it to the back, it has an overflow that's down gradient of the abutting house. So we're taking all of that area that currently flows towards the adjacent house and piping it out back. So that will be an improvement. And then any other runoff from the lawn will be intercepted by that stone trench. Important to note is that the project actually results in a reduction of impervious areas. There's a lot going on here, but it ends up being just about a wash, a slight decrease. And that's primarily because the tennis court is quite large and being removed. As far as vegetation, there are 19 trees that are being removed. They're shown in pink on this plan. They show a little bit better on the hard copy. But there are 19 trees, and they're cedars, maples, and oaks. However, there is very significant plantings being proposed that Sean Papich had put together. There's a total of 74 trees, including deciduous, evergreens, and ornamentals. And there's also 180 shrubs. Those are all shown on the plan. In addition to that, not shown are perennials. There are quite a few perennials. Moving on to the notice of intent portion of this project. There are obviously no wetland alterations being proposed. The only portion of the work within the 50-foot buffer is located in the backyard. Jeff, if you could point that out. Yeah, at the right-hand end of the wall, there is an area that will be replanted in the 50-foot buffer. So basically, a portion of the existing lawn right there is in the 50-foot buffer. And with the reconstruction of the wall will be moved outside of the 50-foot buffer, and then that area vegetated with trees and bushes. And then if you note also that the majority of the work is outside of that 100-foot buffer, the green line. So outside of the jurisdiction requiring a notice of intent filing. So other than that, all areas will be restabilized as soon as possible. And during construction, there will be an erosion barrier. It'll be one of the bigger 12-inch mulch socks along the entire down gradient limit of work. And with that, I would be glad to address any questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff. Couple of quick questions. So the existing wall that's in the back here, you're proposing pull it up on my site plan, it's a little better here. The proposed concrete block gravity wall with cobblestone finish. How high, so there's nothing there now. How high is that wall being proposed to be?
At its highest point, it's about 9.5 feet. And that's where it's labeled bottom of wall 35, top of wall 44.6. At that point there, the existing grade drops off quite a bit and the wall is taller than elsewhere. It tapers to no height at all at either end.
Okay, so what happens between the first to smaller circle that Jeff just circled there, the elevation 35, and going back to the existing walls and ledge to be removed or coming back towards the house? Because it significantly drops off there. And
Yeah,
I'm curious to know what happens between like contours 45 and 35.
45 and 35. Yeah, so the top of wall is elevation 44.6 consistently throughout the entire wall. It's the bottom of wall that varies to match the existing grade. So at the beginning of the wall has no height to it. It's matching existing grade. And then, and then the grade naturally goes down, so the wall becomes taller.
So what is the actual purpose of the wall?
The wall is to build up the grade and give them more of a flat backyard.
So are you saying that the existing elevation now is at the bottom of the wall is 35, but the top of the wall is roughly 44? And are you telling me that behind this wall now will be complete fill? You're going to be bringing in 9 feet of fill?
That's correct. I mean, that's the most drastic portion where they need the most fill, but yes, in that area.
So basically, you're proposing all these the existing ledge that's there now, that's outside the 100, that'll be removed. And fill will be proposed to be brought in right up to almost a 50-foot buffer there.
Exactly.
How much fill, how many cubic yards of fill do you envision that would take?
I haven't done that calculation. I don't have the volume in front of me.
Okay, I wasn't gonna say that's significant. That is a significant amount of fill being brought in, and I would like to know how many yards of fill that is.
Yeah. So Jay, if you move back to the 45 contour, the proposed 45 contour.
Yeah, Jeff has the annotation going here, not me. Sorry.
Okay, Jeff, do you see the 45 contour in the backyard near the 100-foot buffer?
Yeah, here.
That's the existing. Yeah, actually, I meant the proposed. There it is in magenta.
Hold on a second. Let me try to zoom in on this a little bit more.
Okay, yeah, I see that now. The magenta, that's the 45.
Yeah, so the point I'm trying to make is right there, the grade is only coming up 3 feet. You see the existing 42 contour below it?
Yep.
So it's not like this whole backyard is being filled 9 feet. That's not the case at all. Most of it is less than 4 feet, if maybe a foot or two in most areas.
Yeah, no, I get that, but there are areas there from where the 100 kind of comes into a 90-degree angle right there in the middle at the 40, where the 100-foot contour meets the 45 right in the middle there. At the 90-degree angle, which goes over that, that's a solid 10 feet. And I do see that it tapers off to the left and right there. It tapers down to 2 or 3 feet. But again, that is a significant amount of fill. I don't see that, outlined at all on the plan here. So that's something that I would like to see in much more detail, in the amount of fill that you believe that would take.
Sure. Okay.
Other comment, I know there were some comments earlier in the week, and I know you've addressed them regarding the proposed barn over here and the neighboring property at 110 Nichols Road. Can you just describe what changes have been made over there to the plan? And I believe you spoke to the homeowner, but if you could just talk a little bit further about the changes over there on the, I don't know what side it is on the side of the proposed barn closest to 110 Nichols Road.
Yep. So the down gradient limit of work in that area, we are proposing a stone trench. And we've made that stone trench twice as long and twice as wide. And then in addition to that, all of the roof runoff goes to a drywall system that we had in front of the barn. So if that overflowed, it would overflow to that kind of critical area adjacent to the neighbor. So by moving that drywall to the back, now the overflow is down gradient of that abutting house. So we're really getting all that water away from the neighbor.
Okay.
You didn't want to capture it in front first?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
You didn't want to, sorry, Jeff, you didn't want to capture it in front?
So the downspouts in the front will be piped to the back, getting it away from the neighbor.
Are you talking about the neighbor in front at 94 Nichols or the abutting neighbor at 110?
110.
So the stormwater will no longer go or propose to go over to that little area. Yeah, right there.
Yeah,
That
exactly.
was,
Yeah, it's a critical area. It's a low point immediate with the house
Right.
right next to the property line. So
Mhm.
anything we can do to get to the water away from that area is beneficial.
Jeff, if you look at photograph 5, I believe you can see that area. You can see the house, you can see the dip right before the other property, the other individual's property line. I assume that's where the proposed barn is going, where the red fence is.
Yeah, hold on a second. Let me try and pull that up.
Yeah. This is 5 of
Jeff,
11.
I can share my screen. Oh, you have the photos right there, but I'm happy to
Yeah,
share
just-
my screen.
Yep. Hold on one second. Okay, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Jeff, I
Yeah, so
assume
that
your
fence
trench,
is protecting that maple tree, which will remain, and the barn will be beyond it, more in that area of the cedar trees.
So are there three or five cedar trees coming out in that area? Is that,
There are quite a few cedar trees in that area. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8,
Mhm.
9. There are 9.
and all of them are being removed?
They are, yes. But again, 74 trees are being planted.
Do we have a planting plan that goes along with this project, and maybe a good time to turn it over to Sean or anyone else or answer that question? But do we have a landscape plan for this?
We didn't submit the actual landscape plan. All the trees are shown on this site plan, and we have the typical tree legend on the plan, and we specify all the trees to be native from your list of approved plantings, deciduous trees to be 3 to 4 inch caliper, and evergreens to be 6 to 8 feet tall. The final planting plan, I don't believe is complete. So they, as far as exactly what type of trees are going in those locations.
Okay.
That's correct.
One of the issues, and I've made this a comment in previous hearings, is that I'm looking at the tree legend on the site plan, and I see existing trees to be removed, existing trees to remain, and then the proposed trees. And it's really, although it might be a very, very light magenta and a shaded and maybe a darker color, we really need to see that more finely outlined in a pink or a yellow or red or a dark blue, or just, I really have a hard time making heads or tails with the tree legend.
Yeah, they're a lot more clear on the hard copy that I'm looking at. So
I appreciate that.
I'll find a way to get them to show better on the PDF.
Thank you. I mean, we get the 50 and the 100-foot outlined, great in red and green, but we just need to get that tree legend.
Yep, I'll make sure that shows better on the PDFs moving forward.
Dave, may I make a few comments along this line while we're talking about it? Jeff, can I ask you to go over by the proposed pool location, please?
Is that okay?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you. If I'm not mistaken, they're showing trees to be removed here, one over here, and then you get into the 100-foot, between the 100 and the 50. There's one here.
Oops, sorry.
Sorry
about that.
That's all right. And then there's a few more which are down here. Okay, I think gives it a total of 10. I'd like to say that if you look at Google Earth, what you will see is that this buffer line of trees currently does something. You give me a second to finish speaking. Does that? And you can tell it's a current photograph because the house out front is under construction, at least halfway done, and it's just now completed. So I'm not convinced that this, well, first of all, if you look right now, most of this area has already been cleared. So I'm not sure, and it gets cleared all the way back to what they're showing is kind of this tree line here, which is suggestive of the fact that the trees in this area, right? Sorry, I'm gonna have to catch up. That area there has already been, trees have already been removed, okay? The next thing that's important is that, you know, they're showing these trees on the edge. If these trees have canopies, they would have to be quite substantial to actually be what's creating this hedge line. So it's hard to get a feel that it's only these couple trees are being removed. I say couple, I know it's closer to 10, but I don't know how many exactly are in the 100-foot buffer. But I do believe the trees have been removed already, and now there's additional trees that are coming out. And we need a much clearer understanding of the whole removal that goes along with this project. I'd hoped to get out there myself this afternoon. You can see that there's obviously been some removal. It's got to be documented. It's got to be clear. Having said that, we do need a final landscape plan. We need to know what the trees are. You know, as a landscape architect, I know that 70 trees can mean a lot of different things. 70 trees could be 70 very big trees. It could be 70 small trees or any combination in between. But until we have a really thorough understanding of exactly, you know, in this area, what's being removed, what has been removed, then the comparison to what's actually going to go in the future is really a moot point. Jay, can I go on? I have one other item I'd just like to talk about. It doesn't have to do with trees. Is it all right if I ask another question?
Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I think we're gonna get to the landscape design portion of this in a few minutes, but go ahead.
Okay. So then I'm gonna hold off then. Let's see if anyone else has comments.
Okay. Why don't we get to, I know we don't have a landscaping plan. I would like to see a landscaping plan as well, but maybe we could turn it over. It sounds like Sean Papich is available to talk a little bit more about plantings, et cetera. Is that true?
That's accurate. That's accurate.
Okay.
Jay. This
Thanks.
is Sean Papich Landscape Architecture, 222 North Street in Hingham. And so what you were looking on the Morse engineering plan is the framework, certainly, of the landscape plan. I do want to go back into one thing that Chris had mentioned. There were not trees removed inside the 100-foot buffer at the moment. No trees were removed that I know of inside the 100-foot buffer. There were some trees outside of the buffer that were removed. Yeah, right in there. That's correct. But there weren't any trees removed inside the buffer that I know of. The landscape plan in itself is intended to provide some screening between neighbors. It's also intended to be ornamental also, most of that is outside the 100-foot buffer. The areas around the swimming pool, that whole swimming pool area is outside of the 100-foot buffer, other than a fraction of the proposed pool shack. So that is heavily planted. The one thing I would like to go back to that Jeff Hassett mentioned is the retaining wall. There was some mention about it being a tremendous amount of fill. There is, I just want to reiterate that it's the one kind of sliver, the belly of it there, where you see bottom of wall 35 and top of wall 44.6. That's where there gets to be a little bit larger amount of fill right in that little area. The rest of it is substantially less than that. So I want that to be pointed out so you understand that.
Okay.
And so it's really just that small area to the top part of the page, I should say. Yeah, that's correct. Right around that area. Thank you. Yeah. In terms of plantings themselves over by the barn, again, it's Chris is right. Combination of 74 trees could be anything. We haven't finalized all the species. We don't usually typically finalize all of the species for areas outside the 50 at this point quite yet. We usually are waiting to get the hardscape elements and the structures approved before we finalize all the plantings. you can see in the area at the end of the long wall in the back where we noted existing walls to be removed, infill disturbed areas with mitigation plantings. So some of those areas are lawn right now. So some of that area that you see multiple plantings there, and those were identified by quantity and by size, larger than the minimum size too. But those were identified as clethra, inkberry, and viburnum species in that area. And that's about 840 square feet, if I have it right. I'm somewhere close in there. So we have quite a bit of planting going on in that area alone. And that's for the work that we were doing in removing the lawn area and removing that other retaining wall. That other retaining wall actually extends out beyond the 50. Yeah, thank you, Jeff. Nailed it. That's right. So I want that to be clear, what is being changed and modified in that area also. Substantial amount of work was done by Jeff at the proposed barn area for the additional drainage and mitigation. There's also going to be a substantial amount of plantings at the barn area also. So we haven't finalized every bit of planting on here. We finalized areas that were being disturbed in the 50, where we illustrated everything else by symbol, which Jeff described on his tree legend. So, I mean, that's I should say it's probably a reasonable summary. Deciduous trees, 3 to 4 inch caliper at a minimum. The conifers 6 to 8 foot tall at the time of planting. Likely going to be taller than that. Typically they'd be taller, depending on which pieces we're doing. Some of the cedars we may not make very tall. We may not plant those very tall just because depending on the time of year, they can tend to have some difficulty rooting in. So we don't always plant those large. Some of the other plant material we do. Rough summary. I think it's a rough summary without all the plants. We haven't identified every plant on the plan, but you see the symbols.
Right. All right, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff Summers, our agent. Jeff, you've been out there. I see you have the photos that are up there as well. Any comments on your end that haven't already been discussed?
Yeah, I was just going to say that back up in here, the actual wetland area is associated with Inner Little Harbor. It's more of a marsh to the south, and then as you move more to the north east, it kind of becomes more upland, wooded wetland. Most of the work, as Jeff Hassett said, is outside the wetlands buffer zone. So the garage, the pool, the shack, half the barn, and the driveway reconfiguration is outside the buffer zone. The main work inside the buffer zone is the half the barn. And then of course, removing the trees here, the fill, and then the wall. This area over here, which is the garden chicken coop area, is mostly lawn with some ledge outcrop. And then so with the stormwater, actually, Jeff, you said it was kind of a wash as far as impervious goes, but according to your stormwater management summary plan, there's actually a reduction of about 1,900 square feet. So I thought that was fairly significant. I think, originally Jeff realized that, while there is a reduction in overall impervious, looking at the site as a whole, that, this area over here was going to be a potential problem for these neighbors whose house is like literally on the property line. So this house, when I spoke with the neighbor, she said it was originally a carriage house. So she was concerned about water coming off the barn and down the hill. So Jeff Hassett originally had a stone trench proposed and this infiltration area over here. So when I was looking at it, I suggested that maybe he could increase the size of the crushed stone trench and put the infiltration chamber in the back. So this area would become saturated with water. This soil would become saturated rather than over here, which may then, run underground towards their house. And then in the event of a 100-year storm plus, when this overtops, it would run off the back and not towards the neighbor's house.
Jeff, let me ask you a question. Why don't you have that storm runoff go to the chicken coop area? Chickens would love that water. Seriously, because it seems to me, if you look at the photograph, and the photograph, I think it's number 6, I count 8 to 10 trees somewhere in the area of the proposed barn and the house on that side. It all just seems to be squished together there with a lot of drainage activity and walls and an enormous plot of land. I don't understand why we're cutting down all these trees for the barn and squeezing everything in right along the contiguous border. Right, I mean, you're within 3 or 4 feet of the side of that house, which to me doesn't make any sense. You have all this room to the left, Jeff, for your drainage facilities and all of that. So why are we not working to the left-hand side of the proposed barn, or all your drainage soakaways and all that? Why are you squeezing them in that crowded area to the right?
So the area to the left of the barn is actually up gradient. And there's exposed ledge in that area too. So it's where it's lawn, I believe ledge to be very shallow. So that you really don't have the opportunity to put stormwater in that area.
Could you look at photograph 4, please? Or call it photograph 4?
Yeah, hold on one second, let me find that.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. That's 5. There you go. There's, I count at least 10 trees. That's where the barn's going, I believe. And then you have the house on the other side of the red fence. I just don't see why we have to squeeze all this drainage workings in that 5 or 6 foot area between the side of the proposed barn and the house on the other side when you have all this room in front. I mean, there is some ledge there. You can still work with it. And you get lots of trees there.
So, I mean, currently they have.
I mean, I walked that property today and I thought there was some ledge outcroppings to the left, but there was definitely more room. I mean, while you do have 3.5 acres, you don't have to, and most of it has to be up front. You can move some of this over a bit and it doesn't have to be right on the abutter's property. I would give them more space. Or if you can bring it toward the front or over toward the chicken coop. You also have some, it looked like railroad ties kind of over to the right more. I mean, there is space to go. There is space. I also walked the property today. I didn't see that garage, so I guess it's gone now. The existing garage has been removed.
They have, yes.
Mm-hmm. And it did seem like 5 or 6 trees of, substantial size were taken down, maybe right within the 100. It wasn't quite clear where it was, but it looked. I noticed that. And I did have some questions about. There's 2 pipes coming out. I think kind of near where you have the steps near the pool equipment. I just wanted to know what that was.
2 pipes coming out near the pool equipment.
Yeah.
Jeff, if you could show us, there you go. Well, not that project. Yeah, there you go, sorry.
Drainage, but I wanted to understand better what you're going to do over there. So you have kind of near where the proposed granite steps are, there's 2 drainage pipes down there. Just wanted to understand what that was for.
Are they existing pipes that you noticed?
Yes, they are. Yes.
I don't know what they're for. They must be drainage for maybe an existing patio or maybe even the tennis court area. Regardless, they would be removed.
Mm-hmm.
They won't be necessary for this.
Was that part of the old approval on this project?
No. Nope, they would have predated that.
Okay.
Jeff, Eric here. I think there was some static. Did you say that you are cutting down trees now? or have cut down trees on this plot?
So I was out there today, and I counted 4 stumps that had been cut down, and they, from what I've been told, are the trees outside of the 100-foot wetland buffer right there.
There were some down here too. There were a couple along this property line.
Until
Okay.
we approve this, Jeff, could you halt that, please, or tell the project to stop cutting down trees? Otherwise, we have a moving target, and we don't know what's there and what's not there. And I don't think it's good faith to have us looking over a landscaping plan and all that, and having trees being felled along the way. And it's just not how things are done. Or we don't like to have them done that way.
Sure, understandable.
Further comments from the commission before I have a couple comments myself here. All right, I will go back to the actual wall that's being proposed here. There you go, thank you. So you're hovering right up against a 50-foot buffer there, and as you know, we have our 50-foot no disturbance, so I appreciate you not going over that, although you're right up against that. I would recommend you give a little bit of consideration to respecting the 50-foot buffer. I don't know how you're going to construct that. I would like to see how you're going to construct that type of a system. If it's a granite, if it's a block, then are you going to pour a footing there? Is it going to be like a 2x2 footing and you're going to put block on top of that? Or are you going to put block right on top of something? You're going to need to have some type of footing. So I'd like to see a little bit more detail on the actual block wall, all the while giving some consideration to pulling that back a couple of feet from not sitting right on the 50-foot buffer there. I think you, with all due respect, you've got plenty of this, if approved, it would be a significant grassy lawn area there over what you have now, and would be a beautiful site and location. I guess I would also ask, what's going to be going on the other side of the wall here if you're bringing that wall up 9 feet? What type of safety measures are going to be put in there with respect to somebody falling off or taking a step off and going off the back there? Not really so much conservation, but you might want to consider little row of 6 1 foot, 2 foot high shrubs there. I know you don't want to put 10-foot high trees there and block the view, but for a safety measure, I'd be curious to see what's actually going to happen there. So I would like you to think about that as far as consideration. I don't know if you've thought about that. You're going to have a 9-foot drop off right there, correct?
Jay, we have thought about that. We are going to be planting a shrub border.
Okay.
So we are going to be doing that along the top of that wall. The wall itself is a large block that is filled with gravel. It is on a gravel footing, on a crushed stone footing.
Okay.
It's very easy to build. There's not going to be a lot of form work, or there wouldn't be any form work at all.
Okay.
It's excavated, and most of this really gets built from the backside, so it gets built from the uphill side. So the disturbance is minimal to the lower grades below there.
Yeah.
If I can add to that, the face of the wall is at a minimum 4 feet back from the 50-foot buffer where the mulch sock would be installed.
Okay. All right. Yeah. So and again, I appreciate that. That's helpful to know. So that there's no concrete footing, there's no mortar footing. The block is filled again with gravel or but no lime, etc. No concrete, no mortar. And again, it would be helpful to have something, again, I think we'd like to see a little bit more of a landscape plan, just for the safety of children. If there are children running around out there chasing a ball, and hate to see somebody take a header off the back here.
This is Jason Culpa, 100 Nichols Road.
Hello.
Thank you, everyone. Good to meet you. First, let me tell you, safety's foremost on the mind of not just for my own children, but for the neighborhood. I've got 2 kids, Brady and Cooper, ages 4 and 6. So we are obviously taking precautions, and from a motorized pool cover to making sure none of the kids fly off. You haven't met my wife, but the last thing I want to do is have one of those kids go over the wall. I'll definitely be sleeping on the couch more often than I already do. You know, I just want to say a couple things. Again, thank you for your time today. Obviously, we're new to the neighborhood. First, our vision for the project, didn't have a chance to say it, but we want to maintain a very natural look. We love the beauty of the area. It's what attracted us to it. We don't just want these large areas or taking out trees. I mean, we don't want to take out a single tree if we don't have to. We are planting 73 trees. You know, my goal is to plant as many trees as we can, especially to be respectful to neighbors. We want to be a good citizen and make sure that everybody is happy with what we're doing. Going back to the barn, if I may, there's a couple things I'd like to just express. One is we went ahead and took the liberty of putting the drainage there just for the neighbors' sake, and we want to work with them. The reason the barn is over to that side there, I understand that, you know, we could put it, you know, just lots of places is we'd have to blast all that ledge out there. There's a ton of rock in there. We thought about it. We thought about moving it closer, and you'd have to blast just for the sake of drainage. So we thought that this is a solution that we felt was suitable and maybe a little bit, I don't want to say overkill, but I thought it was a good job, and that still allows us the ability to drive into the barn from the road if necessary, if we have to park something in there. So again, you know, moving it over, while I guess it could be an option, is it's not really cost effective to blast all that and go through all that work if we can get it done in different ways. So I also agree there are some trees there, but we're going to plant big trees and you know, we're going to make up for any tree we take out. You know, and I think the message to Sean was anything we got to take out, we got to do 3X and make it better. So hopefully that answers some of where we're coming from and give you some more insight. And our chickens, we don't know if they swim or not yet, so we're putting them over there again. See my
as long as they make eggs.
So.
Well, I appreciate that, those comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Not often we have an applicant that actually comes and speaks on behalf of himself or herself. So I do appreciate all those comments. I think that, before I forget here, we did have, and I want to read into the record here, we did have a comment from one of the abutters at 110 Nichols Road. So I'm going to read the comment that we just received here live, and it says, "We'd like to register our concern at the very large size and height of the barn and its location so very close to the house, just a few feet downhill from the barn, and the loss of mature trees that provide some buffer between these two properties." So first, I just want to make note that the size and the height of the barn are really not within Conservation Commission's jurisdiction. The height would be within the planning board and the planning department and the building department. I don't know what the actual height is, but it's not something that conservation looks at. I think we are starting to address and have raised some issues about the location and being so close to the abutting properties, et cetera, and the stormwater runoff and in the mature trees. I would like to see a landscaping plan here a little bit more in depth to actually see where the location of the trees are. And Jason, just so you know, when we ask for some more detailed information on some of the plans, it's really just to show that 6 months or a year from now, when someone goes out there and does an inspection or a site visit at the plan, at the location, they say, well, this looks nothing like what was actually there on the site plan. So, just before we approve, if we were to approve a project, we want to make sure that the plan actually depicts what's actually going on out at the location. So, but I appreciate you hiring a landscape architect and speaking up and with the addition of the trees, et cetera, if trees are going to be removed.
And we'll work it out. Go ahead, Sean.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, I just said I have a couple of other questions, but go ahead, please.
Go ahead, Chris.
Jeff, in this, Jeff and Sean, in this drawing, you call out for the paving around the pool to be granite tailings.
Yeah. That's correct.
So can you explain to the commissioners what you mean by tailings?
Yeah. So it's one other way to say irregular granite paving. So what it is, there'll be, to Jason's point, he wants this place to look pretty rustic, to be honest. He wants that whole area to feel very natural. So the intention is around the pool to use old granite as the coping. So salvage granite curbing as the coping, which is a bit of a unique look, and it already has some age on it. So adjacent to that granite coping that's antique, the intent is to take irregular granite, which is irregularly shaped granite pieces, and use those with a fair amount of space in between the joints, essentially, or between the stones themselves. That little squiggly line that you see around there, that's depicting a really minimal amount of pool surround. Everything else would be softscape to the edges there. So the intent is to minimize the paving around the pool to a great degree, to almost be kind of a single band, almost look like stepping stones are essentially going around the pool. So that was the intent. And occasionally use an irregular granite or an irregular bluestone or a more rigid bluestone, but the intent here was for it to feel very natural and very rustic. So that's what I was talking about for the tailings. And that's just how they're referenced with some of the stone suppliers that we're working with.
Sean, have you, given I know we're throwing some numbers around here with the removal of the trees, the planting of the trees. Were you planning on, prior to tonight, were you planning on developing a landscape plan? Some type of plan?
Yeah, oh, of course, yeah, we would do one. Kind of our next step then would be to put more detail to the plant material and give it a final list, much as you see on this little list that was provided. Yeah, that's one of the things we were going to do that we hadn't given to you yet is a mix of the native plants we're putting below the wall. The rest of the project, the rest of the property will have detailed planting plans for that also. Now, for your usage, in terms of requesting more detail on the plan, I mean, we could get the detail on anything up to the 100-foot buffer on that back to you really quickly, if it comes down to that. But we're gonna be developing the detail on the planting plan over the next coming weeks. But we can certainly give more detail on the work in that 0 to 100 or 50 to 100, I should say. Yeah, real quickly, we can get that right around to you early next week.
Yeah, I think if we, it sounds like we would be continuing, all signs pointing to continuing this hearing anyway, that I think the focus would be, yes, between the 50 and 100. There's a lot of work that's outside the 100, but, that really falls along with our stormwater permit and not so much with the notice of intent. It's within our jurisdiction, but yet, far less restrictions outside of the 100-foot buffer zone here. So I think the focus would be on the 50 to 100. You might want to go to 120 feet or so. Don't just go right up to the 100-foot line there and go a little bit over, because there are some areas that certainly are close to the 100-foot buffer where there is some significant disturbance.
And Jay, I'd just like to reiterate the fact that Google Maps clearly shows that there were or are still trees in the area within the, between the 50 and the 100 that on the plan are not represented as either existing or to be removed. I think it's very important that we understand that. And I think it's also important just to reiterate what you said, and that is that the jurisdiction extends beyond the 50-foot no construction zone, that the area between the 50 and the 100 has to be given special consideration. And in this particular case, when 24-inch, 28-inch, whatever they are, inch trees come down, it it's critical to know, how many of these trees are actually coming down, how much, caliper is coming down, because very quickly 70 trees of 3-inch caliper don't necessarily compute to what was there in the first place. So I think it's absolutely critical that that we have a good understanding, and that we as commissioners can take an honest assessment of what we're looking at here.
I agree with Chris 100%. Good point.
Jay, can I make one comment on the barn area that it's been referenced a couple times? I did want to just make a mention of that I believe that in working in an overall master site plan, the effort there is certainly to relate the different pieces, the main residence to the barn, the pool area, to the pool shack. All of those have a relationship to each other. And so the barn made some sense in that location. The one thing we did certainly do is we've met all building setbacks that were required for that proposed barn. So I think in terms of its proximity to the property line, I think between what Jason was talking about with the ledge removal and the fact that we've still kind of kept this thing off of the property line a decent distance. I think we're about 30 some feet off of the property line to the corner of the barn, the closest corner of the barn there. I think that's quite a bit beyond the setback. So I think we did push it back away from the property line. It's just, I understand that 110 Nichols, you can see the house corner sits right on the property line. So it's challenging that way. So I think we still push the barn further into the property line, into the property beyond the setback, a decent distance. Just wanted to note that because
So, and as you know, so I appreciate that. And right, if the barn meets the setbacks and it's up to building code, which is out of our jurisdiction as far as height goes, et cetera, our concern is the stormwater. And we talked about the, potentially moving the downspouts or the dry well system, maybe a little bit more over to the the chicken coop or over in that area. So I think, there could be some further consideration there. I know you've already made some steps in talking to the owner. There was some nice improvements that were made there, and maybe there could be a little bit more along the way there of getting all that the stormwater from the rainwater from the roofs, a little bit further away. So,
I just wanted to say I'd like to hear more about the back lawn and how much the fill is going to be brought in, what the elevation is going to be raised to, and how many truckloads will be brought. That's what I'd like to know more about.
Yeah, that's information I can provide.
Yeah. So what I have here, and I've created a little bit of a list here, is as far as next steps moving along. What I would like to see, as Marianne just pointed out, which was again pointed out earlier, is the amount of fill that's actually being brought in between that 45-foot contour line and the wall itself. If you want to give, although you've given me a narrative, if you want to put that on paper as far as the construction of the wall itself, outlining again, no concrete trucks, etc. Because somebody will call, if in fact the concrete was out there, someone will call and say, hey, there's 4 concrete trucks out there and a crane out there, or a concrete pump. So, we want to know exactly how the wall is going to be constructed. The amount of fill that's going to be required between the wall and the 45-foot contour line there. If you could further spell out the distance between the wall and the 50-foot buffer, I believe you said it was 4 feet. That would be great as well. If there are any other physical safety measures that are going to be in place along the wall. I believe Sean said there was going to be some small shrubberies there on top of the wall, etc. And then one of the most important things here is a more in-depth landscaping plan, concentrating again on the 50 to 100, but certainly outside the 100 as well, with any removal of trees, planting of the trees, and Sean knows what to do with the landscaping plan and what we look for with that. And following the lines with that, just a more in-depth tree legend. And I don't know if that would be part of the landscape or not. The tree legend, and what I mean by that is the trees that are actually going to be removed, trees that will be remaining, and what else do we have here on the site? Trees removed, trees remain, and then the proposed trees. And again, I don't know if that would be part of the landscaping plan or part of this site plan here as well. So those are kind of the three big things that I would like to see. And I don't know if there were any other things I missed here for the commission or Jeff Summers. Please speak up if I missed anything.
No, I
Jay,
don't.
did you mention that the colors should be distinct for all the trees and bushes? Because as it is right now, I can't see anything.
Yeah, right. That would be further depicted on the tree legend, as I had mentioned earlier. Right, trees to remain, trees to be removed and proposed. Really, just further outline that. And I think we would get a very clear picture of the proposal, what this would look like, a giant Christmas tree here by the time Sean was done with his landscape plan. Did I miss anything else here?
I've one other clarification I'd like to get.
Yes.
Sean, no, I might have lost Sean. Jeff, the wall finish says it's a cobblestone finish. Is that but I know the blocks that Sean was describing. So that's a faux cobblestone, right? It's imprinted into the concrete block.
I'll get back to you on that with,
Yes, this is Jason.
I'm figuring I'm gonna add a detail to the plan, it'll be the Ready Rock standard detail. And I'll be able to get some more information on the exact finish of it.
So I think it's critical to understand who actually will be able to see this wall. I think there's a neighbor. You have a couple neighbors that look like they're down Orchard Cove.
Yeah, Chris, this is Jason. Two things. Yes, on your earlier question on the imprint, and two, to set any minds at ease is we don't want anyone to see the wall, right? We want to make sure that we blend it in with plantings, so it looks part of the natural scape.
Yeah.
But where the wall is located, there's not much room for you to be planting. So the wall itself is going to be what it is when it's done. And I'm just curious. I mean, I'll go out, I'll check to see who actually has views of it, but it's just a point to make. That's all.
Yeah. So the grade falls off beyond the wall, but it is a wooded area with some relatively tall plants in that area, vegetation. So we'll take a look at whether or not that existing vegetation will screen the wall, or if we need to add some more proposed plantings.
Jeff, what's the intention of the proposed steps by the pool shack? Because once you go, I mean, it drops off rather rapidly back there. So
there's an existing walkway down to the water.
To the water?
Yeah, from the existing tennis court, there's currently a walkway down to, or the wetland, I guess. So it's just a landscape walkway down that slope, meeting up with the existing walkway. It's not much of a walkway. It's more kind of a
pretty wooded. Mm-hmm. It looked like it was like where clippings were placed. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep on going, you'll end up in Alex's back garden.
I think we lost Sean here, or Sean dropped off. I don't see him coming back as an attendee. So next question was Jeff Hassett. How long do you think it would take? Would you be willing to represent the project at our next hearing, which is August 6th, or would you want to push it out past that? do you think you would have a landscaping plan done by then? Sounded like Sean said he could have something sometime next week, but I'll throw it back to you as far as a time frame, because it sounds like this hearing needs to be continued.
Yeah, I'm comfortable with August 6th. Sean said he could get his part done, so I'll make sure I get mine done as well.
Okay. Okay, any further comment from I don't see anything from the public here. Anything further from the commission? Okay, so this hearing will be continued until August 6th at a time to be determined later. Good luck, Jeff, and obviously with Jason and Sean, and keep in contact with our agent as far as what needs to be done as far as plantings, etc., or anything that may have been missed at the hearing tonight. And we'll revisit this again on August 6th, 2 weeks from tonight.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Our next item of business, originally scheduled for 7:30, is 20-05, 100, 102, 104 Howard Gleason Road, the removal of some invasives. This is a continuance from June 11th, 2020. And I see that, Jeff, you have moved up our John Cavanaro and Chris. Thank you very much. So just to bring everybody up to speed, this was a continuance from a few weeks ago. Just this past week, I believe it was actually Tuesday, we went out and did a site visit. There were a few of the commissioners who were out there, met on site with John and Chris. So thank you for taking the time. Went out there and walked the site, walked down to and our agent Jeff Summers was out there as well. Walked out to the harbor, kind of took a look around, and I did not get poison ivy, John, miraculously. No itching. But I'm glad that we had a chance to go out there and take a look at it. And I know you wanted to bring up a couple of issues tonight. So again, I know we've only had a couple of days to turn this around. We did get a copy of the MSDS sheet. Thank you, Chris, on the rodeo. So I do appreciate that. We do have that. But I will turn it over to you as far as what you want to do next here with this project, or any specific questions for the commission.
So thank you. And again, thanks everyone for making the time to come out, those who were able to get out to the site this week to walk the site. I think the intention of the site walk, in addition to looking at the overall landscape, was to specifically give some consideration as to what other alternatives could be used. And one thought was, well, could we potentially bring in more salt water into these patches of Phragmite to eradicate the Phragmite? And the goal was to schedule a site visit on around high tide to look at what the water elevation was at high tide. And specifically on the Whale Meadow end, on the northerly end of the project, was it feasible to consider some type of engineering solution to bring salt water into this area to flood the Phragmite patches? And I think it was clear that those of us that walked out and had an appreciation for the elevation of the ground and sort of the orientation of the beach adjacent to Whale Meadow, that it would be a substantial redirection and dredge of material to get salt water into that area on a regular basis. And I think my opinion would be that even if we could somehow engineer and get permitted a large dredge project to bring salt water into that area, that it would be something that would be an ongoing maintenance problem, because what nature wants to do is push more sand into that area as it faces northeast on the open gap of the harbor between Whitehead and Strawberry Point. That's sort of the due northeast direction that that sort of opening lays just northward of the Phragmites. So, Chris, I think you're muted, Chris, so you might want to unmute yourself if you want to chime in. But the two things that we were asked to look at were, one, produce an SDS sheet for the material, and then two, to give consideration to what we thought, what Chris may have thought about what would repopulate here. if the Phragmite were, after the removal of the Phragmite. So I'm going to have him talk a little bit about that. But I think the gist of this evening is that we'd like to get some direction on whether or not the herbicide application is a feasible approach to move forward. And if so, what additional information to ensure that the commission was comfortable in terms of the use and maintenance and ongoing upkeep of the area would satisfy an order of conditions.
And I appreciate that. And I completely agree with you, John, as far as a major engineering project there to try and bring salt water in, not only that, the permitting, et cetera, but the ongoing maintenance of that area with sediment and a good coastal storm would probably fill up any culvert within the first storm. So while it would sound like a great project, I think it's an engineering feat to try and accomplish and maintain long term, to try and bring salt water in there, given that the elevation, et cetera. But in a perfect world, it would work, but I think that's work. Yeah. Okay, turn it over to Chris, please. Thank you.
Great. Well, I had a terrific site visit. I really felt like I got to know the site better. Originally, I had one of my project managers view the site. So I had a chance to really delve into it. In fact, after I probably stayed an additional maybe hour and a half or so afterwards to really analyze the vegetation, get a feel for the project. I guess the short of the long of it is, I do feel confident that we could manage the Phragmites, through a chemical application that would be lasting. As far as the natural communities that would come back, I've certainly got the information to do that, and I have a vision for that, how to express that, but I'll need to do a revision to the habitat management plan to express that. The southernmost area, I know you can't see that, I'm sorry, but the across from the club, from the yacht club, I think that's going to need a little more consideration as far as planting goes and restoration potential. But the areas up north, I felt like I would stand by my original assertion when we talked a couple of weeks ago, that the natives would come back, and I'm prepared to give you a better sense of the natural communities and the specific plants that I would envision coming back. So I guess where I'm a little, I won't say stuck, but my next task would be to go back to the drawing board to some extent with my habitat management plan and include some more information that you've asked for. I would do my best to minimize the herbicide component, the herbicide use, and demonstrate that. I would further discuss revegetation potential and restoration potential. And then I would move in the direction of a section on monitoring and reporting to give the commission a sense of ownership of the project and knowing what was going on an annual basis. So that would be my sense of how to move the project forward. But I guess I just wanted to come back and see if the commission would be receptive to this, or knowing what you know now. Are you prepared? I'm not asking you to accept the herbicide use. I know that that is the piece that we're struggling with this project. I'd just like to know that if I do go and revise the documents and continue to build this case and provide the information, if the commission would be receptive to that, or if you prefer to say at this point, no, chemicals are really not an option, we're going to stick with our bylaw. And then John and I would know kind of where we stand and how to proceed perhaps from here. We move on to a plan B. So that's generally what I wanted to bring up. Thanks.
Sure, and certainly understandable. So, I think there were some significant comments that were raised prior to with glyphosate, et cetera. My question is back to you, and we'll kick this around, is, are there any other, you mentioned the imazapyr might be an alternative chemical solution that may not be as toxic as the glyphosate, which may have similar results given the mowing, etc. So would that be your if the glyphosate were not approved by the commission, would that be the next step go to? Or what would be what are the alternatives?
I think the alternative would be an imazapyr product, but I guess this is where I'm a bit conflicted in that I honestly believe that the glyphosate product, the rodeo, the wetland version of Roundup, would be the best product for use. But I also recognize that you're in a bit of a hard place because there's a lot of bad press on glyphosate right now. So my sense is that imazapyr is a harsher, rougher herbicide to use, and it has more residual soil activity and things that we could certainly discuss. I don't want to give you a false impression. I mean, I'm pretty, I want the best for the area as well. I don't want to destroy anything. Just that I feel like there's a lot of political issues around glyphosate. I want to stand by that product, but of course, if that is just not tolerable to the commission, then we could move towards an alternative herbicide. There are a couple of others. But just in my professional judgment, I would prefer, I think it would be a more benign effect to use the rodeo herbicide.
All right, and again, that's something that we struggle with here, as you have mentioned, and you probably struggle with other towns. I know you mentioned you were dealing with some others down on Martha's Vineyard that, some towns have been more restrictive, and Cohasset is one of those where in our bylaws, we restrict the use of herbicides and pesticides absent good cause shown. So, that's what I personally struggle with internally here. But I want to open it up to the rest of the commission here. If anybody has any comments with respect to the use of the herbicide, pesticide, or specifically the glyphosate, because I think that's what we're kind of struggling with now. Not so much, maybe I could be wrong here, but not so much with the mowing and the control of the Phragmites. My feeling is that I'm supportive of the control of the Phragmites. It's how we go about doing that. So I just want to open it up to the rest of the commission if anybody wants to speak on that behalf.
Chris, this is Marianne. In Barnstable Harbor, they had talked about some alternatives, being that they had cut it back before July to reduce the food preserves, but they also added in low-cost grazing of goats and livestock to further eradicate, and then continue back to cutting back I think it was with a seasonal plan. What have you seen of use of that kind of management plan, and has that been successful?
Well, I do think that you can reduce Phragmites with those methods rather, with repeated cutting. I mean, the theory is that if you starve the total available carbohydrates in the rhizome, just never let it come up for air, that you'll eventually deplete the energy in the rhizome. It's just that it's so, it's very powerful, the rhizome of Phragmites. So I think as I'm considering lasting results, I've never considered that an option, because you'll be cutting it forever. It'll never give up. But as long as you stay with it, you can probably reduce it by like 75%. I would just venture that as a guess. I mean, I have seen that in the literature. So
well, also according to the USDA, Beltsville Agricultural Research Center in Maryland, they use the goats and the livestock. They reduced the Phragmites by 73% with the livestock. So have you seen people use that before, like cutting and then livestock, goats? I know we had a gentleman, he used goats to reduce poison ivies, and that reduced in his area. But in your use of Phragmites, have you seen livestock? included with a cutting combination.
Yeah, and I do have goats as part of my farm and also business. So we do use goats, herds of about 12. The problem with goats on this site, or a lot of Phragmites sites, if you have a very dry Phragmites site, it's feasible. You can get them out there, but the goats really don't like their feet wet at all. So I think that would be tricky. They eat everything. So anything else that you planted in the area or that came back, they would nibble on. So basically through using livestock grazing, you would select for a lower growing marsh community, probably grasses, sedges, things like that. And then I know this sounds funny, but probably the better animal to use that doesn't mind having its feet wet are cows, which are used on bog turtle restoration projects in New York and Connecticut and Massachusetts and the western part of Massachusetts, the Berkshires. Anyway, I just don't see it as being terribly feasible to do that. They would have to come in cycles probably 3 times a year. You put up a type of electric fencing that's run off of solar panels. So it's all very portable and it can be set up. So you would mow, allow them to nibble it back, take them off of the grazing area, and then bring them back. I guess I'd be a little concerned about water quality too, just because, you know, goats or cows or any animals are going to, you know, they're going to leave their droppings in there as well.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
So,
but I guess with a chemical too, that could affect the water quality as well.
Well, you know, good point. I guess as I'm thinking about ways to give you the best assurance that I can, that we're going to do as careful a job as possible. I have been reconsidering some methods. Like a colleague of mine on the Cape has this technique where it's all done. It's called bundle and drip, for example, where you just grab just armfuls of Phragmites and you bundle it with a, you know, with a string type of twine, and then cut it off at the very top, dispose of that, and then take the same formulation of the glyphosate and spray that directly into each and every stem. But because they're bundled together, it's more efficient. So there are some other techniques, you know, that could be done based on that concern. I mean, my contention is that nothing goes into the water when it's done carefully, but I guess logic would dictate that if you're doing a foliar application, something is going to, you know, come into contact with the soil. And I will admit that that will happen despite being very careful about it. So to minimize it, there are targeted applications such as hand wiping,
right,
and this bundle or cutting and dripping method that could be, you know, more strongly advocated for in my plan.
Right.
Yep. Okay, so I appreciate all those comments. And again, I think the center of this is I'd like to hear if any other commissioners have any comments with respect to moving forward on the herbicide, pesticide, specifically the glyphosate, so that we can try and work with the applicant here as far as coming to some resolution on a plan for this project.
Yeah, Jay, give me a few minutes. I didn't want to jump in too soon. I have very firm feelings on this project. I think this project is rotten. I think it is a type of application of technology we should never have a part of as conservation commissioners. We're not allowed to use it. It's not going to work. I've read hours and hours in literature, industry literature, and very few projects with glyphosate, very few projects with goats, with disking, with cutting, with burning. 5 to 10 years later, very few of them have succeeded. They all seem to have the Phragmites back, because Phragmites normally can endure longer than our management attitudes to control it. And it's almost impossible to kill off, all right? you know, we can go on and talk about it. We can talk about how most European countries have banned glyphosate containing herbicides. We can talk about how a lot of American locales have banned it. We can talk about how it's on the verge of being banned by American authorities, why Bayer just forked out $10 billion to settle a number of class action suits alleging that it's carcinogenic. That's $10 billion bucks, and they probably have another 40 to 50 billion to go before all of the litigants are bought off. So the glyphosate to me is on the verge of being withdrawn from the market. It's a question of probably finding a replacement for it in the agricultural chemical industry. And given its sullied reputation, I don't think that's the kind of activity we should partake in. I don't think we would ever be able to put together a variance proposal for work including this herbicide. I think, you know, you look through the 4 different criteria that we use to look at variances for work in the resource area and the wetlands, and I don't think spraying with a herbicide would meet any of those criteria. You're going to end up with a moonscape afterwards. It's going to go on for 3 to 5 years. Anything less, and we're joking ourselves, we're probably not going to succeed. At some point, the land developer is going to sell them off and it'll become the individual property of the landowners. And then heavens knows what's going to happen at that point. So I come to the conclusion that there may not be a solution right now. If you look at Europe and you look at what's going on in Asia, they use their natural biocontrols. There are moths and beetles that control the proliferation of Phragmites australis. Now apparently those parasitic insects don't survive in this country, but there are plenty of people working on it. So maybe what we need to do is just sit tight and wait for technology to catch up. I personally, given the extent of the problem, don't see any reason why we have to do anything right now, when in the next 2, 3, 4, or 5 years, we may have a much more elegant technical solution. You know, we're being pushed because somebody wants to clear the land. I think there's probably a land development opportunity there for some money to be made, but I don't think we should be motivated to move at a pace against our best judgment because we have somebody who would like to get rid of a particularly tough, noxious, invasive species. And like I said before, as best I can tell in the literature I've read, and I've read hours and hours, there are very few of these projects which 10 years after they began have been successful. It always seems to come back. And it's the same case with the Japanese knotweed, which has infiltrated the area. So I would be strongly opposed to any herbicidal action. And I don't think we'd be able to put together a variance proposal for work in the buffer zone that was honest and diligent and would allow us to permit this work to take place. So that's my view. I'll shut up now.
Appreciate the comments, Eric. Thank you. Any other commissioners have a comment on this?
Jay, I don't know if I feel as strongly against a particular herbicide as Eric does, but I think that I'd like to reiterate what you said. The bylaw says that we can that herbicides and pesticides are prohibited unless we as commissioners give a waiver for good cause. And I don't know what good cause would be. Maybe if it was blocking a drainage channel and flooding out the school or some neighbor's house or something like that. But you know, I've not heard testimony of any sort that's suggested that control of the Phragmites somehow proves the ecology to a level that suggests to us that we should be kind of ignoring the intent of the bylaw. So.
Okay, I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other comments from the commissioners? One other comment I did want to make, if anyone, for those of us that walk down in there, this is a fairly large site. and I don't have the exact numbers here. It's more than an acre, and some could argue that it's closer to 2 acres, but it seems like it's at least 1 acre of Phragmites that is proposed to being removed down on the lower half of the property. And if you walk down all the way to the actual ocean area where the seawater is, and you look back, there's adjoining property there. It looks like there's probably an old cart path separated by just sand, sea sand, and some grass in there that's probably about 15 or maybe even 20 feet wide, with a whole another patch of Phragmites on the other end. And one of the questions, I looked at this and I say, well, where does it end? Where, if you kill off all these Phragmites, will the other Phragmites on the other side start to invade and take over that hopefully natural habitat as a result of that? So I continue to kind of keep struggling with this, and I don't know if this is a case of whether or not the commission wants to further explore an independent consultant on this. I would throw that out there if you think that that's even warranted. I know the time is of the essence here as far as the proposal. I'm not opposed to, I guess I would go back to the applicant, as you had mentioned, now is the optimal time to actually start to do the mowing of the area as a first step in order to try and control the Phragmites. So I struggle with a lot of things here. I struggle with the pesticide herbicide use, absent good cause shown. I agree with Chris. I'm not quite sure where the actual good cause shown here. This is a beautiful, absolutely gorgeous piece of property. It's out kind of in the middle of nowhere. So I struggle with the good cause shown, because I'm not sure why we're even entertaining the project in the first place. But anyway, so I still have reservations about
it. Jay, I did a quick calculation, and you have 80,000 square feet, which is the number presented. I did an average. I counted there are 20 stems per square foot. That comes out to 1.6 million stems that we have to take care of, which may have to be hand treated. I wonder about the realism of the solution that we're talking about, because that's just a gargantuan hand treatment possibility. And if you don't hand treat it, you're spraying it and the stuff's getting everywhere, and the place is going to look like a moonscape afterwards. So I just wonder if we really have any idea what we're getting ourselves involved in here.
Let me try and move this along, because I know we could probably talk about this for a while, and I know we have another application here that we need to get to as well. Not to brush this off at all, but the applicant, and I understand the question that are the answer that you're looking for is the glyphosate. Would commissioners be amenable to a mowing procedure with no herbicide? We've heard earlier on that mowing alone, and Marianne alluded to a number, I think it was 73%. I don't know about if that was with the goats or the cows, and I don't know if goats or cows could be added. That would be quite a herd in there and affecting water quality with fecal matter, etc. And I'm not sure we want to do that. But mowing alone would probably take care of 50 to 70% of that the first year, and with a constant mowing plan out there. Would commissioners be amenable to that? Is that something commissioners would vote to support? Just a clear cutting of the Phragmites, and I don't know, I guess I would throw it back to the applicant to think about that as well. But I'd like to hear from the commission on that.
I guess I would be more comfortable. Well, Section 39 prohibits us to use herbicides and pesticides, so I'm comfortable using the herbicides. I do want to plan. I don't think this commission's ever going to solve these plants from returning. It's just going to take patience and persistence, as we know. I mean, if we cut it, I think the timing now is to cut it to reduce the food preserve. So I would be okay with that, but we would need to create a work plan of how it's going to be managed on the constant mowing of it. I mean, there has to be maintenance of it constantly.
Okay. So let me just jump back again and say, because I know this was raised at the beginning here to move this along. Would any commissioners support the use of the herbicide pesticide?
I do not.
No.
Okay. All right. So not hearing that, let me move this along and ask the commissioners how would, I personally, I don't have a problem with the mowing. I think the mowing would be a first step. I would like to see what, if the applicant were willing to move it forward and wanted to take a stab at it and try and mow it and see what results we actually get from a mowing of the area alone. But before I even do that, for the sake of not wasting anybody's time here, how do commissioners, would anybody be opposed, adamantly opposed to the a first cut mowing of the Phragmites?
Can I say something, Jane? I think
Sure.
I would be relatively comfortable with mowing if the applicant came back and said, I'm not looking to exterminate 100% of the Phragmites. If we could settle or envision a compromise solution where the end result was a lot of the Phragmites eliminated, but there's still some Phragmites there, because that's realistic. If we could do that, I would say, yeah, let's go on with the mowing, because we have a realistic objective. But if our objective is to get rid of the Phragmites through mowing, I think we're just kidding ourselves. So if we can be more reasonable and compromise with our long-term objective and kind of learn to live with some Phragmites, I would say, yeah, let's go ahead with mowing. All right, I have no problems with that.
Okay, I appreciate that. So I'm going to turn it back to John or Chris. I think you're getting a sense of where the commission stands on this and whether or not you would be willing to, what your next steps would be. It's getting a sense that we're not supportive of using the herbicide, however, would be willing to work with you here and potentially even revisit this in a year or two or another season to see what results we would get from a simple mowing. So I'll turn it back to you, John or Chris,
Okay.
to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I appreciate the commission giving it a thoughtful consideration. I completely understand your position. I do think it's important to pursue this project, even if it's in a mowing and a more benign chemical approach. I would like to go back with Chris and come up with a definitive plan on how to do that with timing and specific number of cuts. We were pushing to get something done sooner with the application of the herbicide, but I think we can push the first cut back, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, to like November or later in the fall. So that gives us a little time to put a plan together within the next couple of weeks and come back with more definitive replacement of the culture that Chris wanted to give some more thought to. But I do think it's important to give this a go. I think it's as you saw when you walked through that patch of frag, that it absolutely has zero habitat value. It is a complete monoculture, and it's a trash collector. And so there is absolutely zero value to the resource area to have these stands of Phragmites exist. So I do think it's a worthy effort to try to get it down to a reasonable eradication, as has been discussed. And I'm professionally curious to see how something could succeed here, because I think it could be something that could be used elsewhere as well. So without being any more wordy, perhaps we could get a continuance of this and come back with some more definitive response without the herbicide.
Yeah, I'm supportive of that, and again, want to try and work with you, and I'm curious from a professional standpoint the results that we may accomplish here with some simple mowing, and always time to revisit alternatives with other potential applications, etc. So happy to do that if you want some more time, or I guess, John, you asked a question to Chris. Is now the optimum time for cutting, or would you want to wait until November to cut?
I think we'll want to regroup and wait until the fall.
Okay.
Dormant season like November. So I think that really takes the pressure off. We can get back to the drawing board, so to speak, and have some discussions and come back with another plan.
Okay.
If that's what what John's client would like to do, of course.
Okay.
I just want to say ever so briefly, I appreciate being able to cut to the chase relatively quickly. Thank you all for your candid responses. I don't 100% agree, but I respect you for that. And I'm a big fan of Aldo Leopold, who coined the term the land ethic. And that land ethic is in every community, and it has to be defined in every community. I go to a lot of conservation commissions to work on projects like this, and every commission's a little different. And that's what's great about our structure of these conservation commissions. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate that. Yeah. And again, every time we make a decision, it's precedent setting as well. So we try and be fair and to the best of our ability, fair and consistent across the board. So John, what I think, how far push this out? We would we would just continue the hearing, but what do you think is a suitable time frame here? September time frame, and we could always continue it from there. But what do you think as far as timing goes?
Yeah, can we go to the second meeting in September, the 17th?
Sure. Jeff Summers, when are our meetings in September? Is the 17th do we have a meeting on the 17th?
Yep.
Okay. 17th of September works? Okay. All right. Without any further discussion, I'm not seeing anything on the Q&A coming in here. We will continue this hearing until September 17th. And again, please feel free to reach out to our agent in the meantime for any advice or comments back.
Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty. Okay, moving along on our agenda, kind of working backwards a little bit here. Our next item of business, which was originally scheduled for 6:30, is a notice of intent 20-16 for 75 Border Street, the gangway, floatway, Mr. Tedeschi. So just to let everybody know, we're originally, first of all, thank you for your patience in hanging in there this evening. I know sometimes it can be a long process. That's why we had originally scheduled you first on the agenda here at 6:30 to hopefully get you in and get you out. However, there was an issue with the public notice, saying the public notice, it was normally when hearings are continued, there's no need for a re-advertisement, but there was a re-advertisement on behalf of the applicant on this one, and the re-advertisement had stated 7 o'clock. So apologize for that. We had already had something on our agenda earlier for 7 o'clock, so we unfortunately had to move you till this time frame. So I see a few attendees here, and I see some panelists. And Jeff Summers, I see that you have moved up Josh Green. I don't know if there's anyone else that potentially would like to speak on behalf of the applicant. I see that Mr. Tedeschi has been moved up as well. If anyone from the audience, we still have a few people here, has any questions, please submit them through the Q&A. We have received and Jeff, maybe you want to pull up the revisions. There's probably 2 documents that would be worthwhile for everybody. Maybe it would be great to go over the 2-pager, the PDF file that Merrill Engineering had put together outlining the summary of the plan, and then go to the plan itself. Again, for the record here, there was a revised plan that was submitted with respect to the pier, and we also received other documentation from abutters, and as of this afternoon, we received a brief letter from the Gulf Association with some comments with respect to the pier itself, precedent setting, etc. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the applicant, Josh Green, to kind of give us an overview here, and turn it over to Jeff Summers, who probably would be best to share our screen here so we can go through the proposed changes.
Jay, before we move on, can I point out to you that there is an attendee who goes by just the letter K who has raised their hand?
Yes, if Kay could type a comment. First of all, if you could type your full name in the box there or through the Q&A and let us know who Kay is, that would be great. I've listened into Board of Selectmen meetings, Select Board meetings, and Planning Board, and they have not even entertained comments unless their full name is there. So Keith Wallow, okay, great. Keith, if there's a specific question you have or you want to speak, please do that through the Q&A. And when the time comes, we will bring you up to a panelist to allow you to speak if you need to speak. All right. So again, I will turn it over to the applicant here, and Jeff Summers, if you could share your screen, that would be great.
Okay, can you see that okay?
Yeah, I can. Could you actually bring up the summary of changes first? And I think that would be very helpful, at least from my standpoint and maybe from the audience. Yeah, excellent. If we could help you out here, Merrill Engineering, if we could just kind of, as a brief overview, go through the revised changes, and then we will go back and look at the plan. I think that would be helpful for everyone to move this along.
Absolutely. So can you hear me? I can't tell if I'm speaking.
Yep, I can hear you, Judge. Name for the record, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
So Josh Green from Merrill Engineers and Land Surveyors. So yeah, if we just want to go through the letter real quick, the first thing was just stating that prior to the original public hearing, we did apply for the variance. Since then, we did re-notify abutters as well as do in legal ad. Moving down into the plan, since the last meeting, I didn't put it in here, but probably should mention that we had our site meeting to review the location of the pier. Getting down into the plan revisions from this point down, it's more that environmentally we showed the trees, as the commission asked, that are in the vicinity of the proposed pier, and we also showed the limit of the salt marsh versus the BVW. The other kind of minor revision to it, or I guess clarification, was just brought up in the last meeting. There was a concern that there would be lights on the pier. We just want to make clear that we don't have any intentions to put lights on the pier. If the commission would like to condition that, we'd be more than open to it. Just because to say that there's no lights isn't exactly a great note on a plan. But the major change between the two the two plans, was that the pier was dropped a foot in height, so it's now 3 feet high and 3 feet wide. That did cause for a few minor revisions that we can go over once we actually go to the plan on top of it. The other thing was note 5 refers to the fact that the location was changed. We reduced the amount or the length that the pier is going over salt marsh from what was shown as 135 feet down to 49 feet. And then on top of that, going to note 6, well, I should say note 5, it does go on to just talk about some of the other previously approved plans that we just reviewed to make sure that we're staying in line with similar projects that have been in town. So then note 6 is just discussing some of the light penetration on the pier. So dropping it to 3 feet, we do recognize the fact that lower piers do cause less light penetration, even though we're making it not quite as wide. So 3 feet wide versus the 4. We changed from 2x8s on the decking to 2x6s. This allows for more gaps along the entire length of the pier, which would allow for greater light penetration. And then note number 7 on page 2 was in regards to the railings. I fully understand the concerns that are coming from the abutters in the association on the railings. I had a discussion with the building inspector. Jeff, please stop me if I know we talked to you if I misspeak at all, but basically the building inspector said that the building code doesn't apply to piers. It's a gray area that still exists with structures. That being the case, ultimately the engineer has an obligation to put forth a structure that is safe for the public and our client. We can't go ahead with a structure that we can't stand by, whether that's for our client now or somebody down the road. We don't like to project to the future, but in cases like this where it's a liability, we do have to project to that. God forbid something down the road, a child or well, I guess child with the biggest concern falls off of here and gets injured. It doesn't look great when you don't have railings on a structure. There's ledge out here. It's not like it's just a soft fall into some salt marsh in the whole entire case. The client had mentioned to Jeff today that they're fine with no railings. It's really an engineering issue and just an overall liability for us to propose a structure that doesn't have railings. So that's the majority of the changes that kind of encompass it. I don't know if we want to go through the plan, those couple of minor changes that I talked about.
Yeah, that would be great to go through the plan. And just for the record, the as you had mentioned earlier, but not on the revisions, the commission did do a site visit out at the property. A number of us were out there and did a walkthrough of the property, the little walk out through the salt marsh. And in full disclosure, I also went out with the harbor master along with two other commissioners for not a site visit for this property, but just for a tour of the Gulf River and looked at other remaining docks in the area. There was no discussion at all with respect to 75 Border Street. It was more of just a fact-finding river cruise up and along the area. So I found that was very helpful in looking at other docks in the area. So I'll turn it back over to you, Josh.
Yeah, so the biggest thing, Jeff, if you scroll down a little bit, or we can go off the profile, but it's clearer in the plan view where we show the proposed stairs. That was the biggest change that we didn't mention in the letter. Obviously, the biggest change being the 3 foot wide, 3 foot high, and the slight change in location to it. You can see that we're using that kind of man-made channel in the salt marsh there to reduce the overall impact to the salt marsh and the length of the pier over the salt marsh. I just want to mention that those stairs are there for access. That's to meet Chapter 91 reg for the state. So that's the reason why those are there. Because the height dropped, we need to put some type of access over at or near mean high water.
And what is the height there exactly, Josh, above the water line? What's the exact height at that location?
At the stairs?
Yes.
From the salt marsh, which would be, it's right at, you can see mean high water is that dash line, so it's right there. It's about 3.1 feet.
Okay. So that the 3 feet is the top of the pier, or well, the decking of the pier, not the railing, the decking of the pier itself.
It's the lowest structural member, so it'd actually be the stringers running across.
Okay. And what are those stringers? Are they 2x8s or?
The stringers are 3x8s.
Okay. So a 3x8?
Yep.
Okay. You don't get those at Home Depot. Okay, so you're probably looking at 4 feet.
Yeah, up until the decking. I mean, you're looking at an elevation of 4.3 and the decking is at 8.1. So you're looking at about a 5 foot to the decking, to the top of the decking.
Okay. Okay. Maybe it'd be good to, since we're up here, to just kind of bring us back or we can start from the end and go backwards or the other way around, and just kind of explain the height differences, et cetera. And then you already talked about the stairs there, but just kind of walk us through that, please.
Yeah. So the overall design of the pier is very similar. It really just shifted down into the existing ground surface by in the most drastic area, it dropped down about 2 feet. Everywhere it dropped at least 1 foot. The more drastic change kind of happened towards the water where the stairs are. We did our best to look at that and make sure, because that's where most of that portion of the pier is the area that people see. So we really want to make sure that stayed at the lowest height we possibly could go. As you move up, we just did what made the most sense with the natural topography out there.
So, and what is the distance with the post here, as far from post to post? What are we talking about as far as distance between the two posts?
The posts are placed 10 feet on center. Are you talking about width, or actually, sorry, in between each bent?
Yeah, length. So there would be a proposed wire going between the two posts.
Yeah, so that'd be roughly 10 feet on center. If you look just to the right of the stairs, it shows 10 feet on center.
Okay. All right. Yeah, please continue.
So I guess just moving back, like I said, from most of the changes happened towards the water here, the section that we're looking at here. As we move to the left across the plan, you'll note that instead of BVW and salt marsh, it's broken up into the two now. From here going left, it's very similar to the plan you saw originally. Basically, from where the railing disappears back, stayed the same.
Okay. And as far as the actual gangway and float, did that location change at all?
It shifted with.
Explain that a little bit.
If you could go to plan view, please.
Plan view. Yep, hold on one second.
Yep.
Yeah, if anyone's not speaking, could you just please put yourself on mute, please?
Did you want to look down here, Josh?
Could you go a little more to the left?
Oh, okay, sorry, yeah.
So before, it was the pier ran just to the left of that man-made channel that we're utilizing now. So the pier and float, I kept everything the same length. So it really just shifted to the right. So the float now is completely within mean low water. The only reason why it wasn't before is because it was to the left. We haven't pushed it out. It's just that because we moved it to the right, it's in a better location as far as the float, giving it a better chance to stay off the substrate for as long as possible.
Okay.
What do you mean a better location, please?
Just one of the major concerns that most of the regulatory agencies have is with floats resting on the substrate or the bottom, the tidal flat, or the riverbed. In this case, we know it's going to happen, so we've provided the skids to keep it from having the total base of it on the flat. When you have it further out into the water and it's able to float for a longer time, it's better for it. But in this case, it's not practical to go to the point where it would be able to float the whole entire time through both tides.
What are skids?
Skids are they're little thinner pieces of wood that go on the bottom of the float. So instead of having the whole entire area of the float on the flat, it's concentrated on a smaller area. It's what DMF recommends or the Division of Marine Fisheries recommends when you aren't able to maintain the proper depth at mean low water.
It's
So
like having a pair of skis on the bottom of a big float.
Exactly.
So you still would be touching the bottom at low tide.
Correct.
And disturbing the bottom, just not as much.
Exactly. It's a mitigation for it, but it's very common.
Is there any way to design the float and make it less deep, make it shallow, or make it more floatable, whereby you would not touch the bottom at all?
Ultimately, the tubs, there's black tubs on the bottom. Well, I don't know if they're always black. They're just usually black. But
I'm sorry, black what?
Tubs. They're plastic, just plastic tubs. They used to use styrofoam. Plastic tubs are what's used now for the flotation devices. Those, just because of the size and the amount of wood that goes into a float, I haven't seen one that, with only a few, it's right at mean low water. So technically at mean low water, one side of this should be on land. There isn't any water for it to float on. So in that case, I don't see, with the weight of the float, I don't think it's practical to keep it floating all the time.
Suppose we told you to have this project go ahead, the float had to be not touching under any tidal conditions the bottom. How would you design it?
It would have to go out further into the water.
Okay. How much further? Any idea?
I don't know. I've looked at some of the record topography of the river, and it looks like it would have to go out a decent ways where it presents. I mean, I know extending the pier itself out to the mean low water line, so that's about 20 feet, wouldn't do it. We'd still be presenting a situation where the skids itself would still touch the bottom.
Okay.
Comments from the commission?
Joshua, you said that the pier doesn't have any lights on it, but in section A, it says it does say it has electricity on it. It says, what is that for?
Yep. So it's common for piers to have an electrical outlet at the end. I've only ever used it to charge my cell phone, if I'm being honest, when I'm working on pier jobs. But I've just been, clients have used it for charging various devices that they use between their boat or other recreational items. Like I said, I don't personally have a pier at my house, so I don't use them enough to say it. They're just always asked for a water service, so some type of small water line going out there, and electrical service for an outlet.
So when you say an outlet, I can certainly understand, wanting to charge your phone. But then I look at that on the flip side. I look at nighttime, and I think the only reason you need an outlet out there for at nighttime is for either like a radio or a light. And we had talked earlier as far as there would be no lights out there. I know sound certainly travels quite a bit in all areas, so I would question, what we would have to think about conditions on what the outlet would be for, but it wouldn't be for lights.
That's correct. I've asked the applicant. He has no intention of putting lights. I think with the concerns from the association on those lights, I completely understand having a condition. There aren't, that I know of, just looking around. I wasn't able to go on a boat tour or anything, but I didn't see any major lights on the piers around the area. So I think it's completely understandable to have that condition.
Or conditioned to have no electricity?
The lights, I mean, I can ask the applicant about the electricity. Like I said, it's just a common thing for it to be. The radio, I don't, just because of the ability for portable radios, I don't know how I could directly answer that one. The lights, I know, are a common issue on piers, so.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeff Summers, any comments here in addition to what's been made? I know that what you've also put up on the OneDrive is similar projects and other photos here, and I'm looking at some of the photos as we speak here. Any comments on this?
Well, I was just going to say that, the overall, so the original project had the dock pretty much, I think it was on this side.
Yep.
So what they've done is use the man-made cut, and there was some debate about what those were originally used for, but to use this area to minimize the impact of the salt marsh. So, as Josh said, the reduction was from, I think, 135 feet down to 49 feet over the salt marsh, and the reduction of the width from 4 to 3 feet. I don't really see how they could minimize this any further. And then up in this area, they did show the trees that were out there. And I wanted to mention too that Josh did send us some photos of similar projects that they had done that showed like a wire railing. I don't know if anybody wanted to see any of those.
I'm actually looking at those right now as we speak. I think it would be great if you could pull some of those up, Jeff.
Yeah, I'm just gonna have to.
Go to the Border Street, and then from the Border Street filing, you'll see the examples of the wire railings, because you uploaded them to the OneDrive.
Yeah, it'll just take me a minute to get there. Sorry.
Yep, no problem. It's under.
Josh, while he's pulling that up, may I ask you a question, please?
Yeah, go ahead, Chris. Sorry, Chris McFarlane, you have the floor.
Josh, so you've reduced the height with of course the caveat that perhaps there will be a little detriment to the vegetation below. But what was the determining factor of putting it at 3 feet versus below a height that would really require a handrail? Not that the handrail is not a smart idea. I mean, I'm getting on an age, I like having a handrail myself, but there is a point where you could actually eliminate the handrail. Is there anything keeping you up at 3 feet?
I've never seen without, an existing pier, I've never seen one proposed at less than 3 feet. I'd be interested to see what the Division of Marine Fisheries would say in that case, because if you go down to 2 feet, it has to be 2 feet wide. So now you're talking about an issue with traveling along the pier.
Yeah, yes. I would think that was tremendous difficulty. So, okay, understood then. Thank you.
Okay, so what we have this, so these were photographs or images that were presented from Merrill Engineering as far as similar projects goes. And Josh, maybe you can just explain, what these are as far as, well, that looks like a metal plate there on the side of the highway. So, but yeah, that one doesn't look like it has a railing. Maybe you could just describe what these railings are and what your project would look like as well, or what you're proposing.
Yeah, so some clients actually ask for the wire railings up front. They like the aesthetics better, but then a few of these piers, aesthetics were actually raised as an issue. It's not a wholly uncommon ask by commissions and abutters to have respect to that. The wire railings really eliminate.
Yeah, sorry, this one we're looking at straight now, that is an all wood railing?
It's wooden, but there's actually, so you see the wooden posts going up vertically, but there's wire railings going across the side, like horizontally, kind of parallel with the decking.
Yeah.
As you can see, you can't see them. So while I 100% recognize the fact that you still see the vertical posts at each bend, we're doing our best here to mitigate all the aesthetics of the railings that we can, and the wire railing really achieves that here. Because you can see it up there, but as the dock fades away or the pier fades away, further away from you really can't see it.
Do you know where these photographs were taken?
All these are in Duxbury.
All in, okay. There was a comment question, where were the photos taken? Okay.
Josh, may I ask you a question? That last photo, when was that built?
That one, I believe that one was in the last couple of years.
Can you go back to the first or second photo, Jeff, please?
Yep.
I'll tell you when to stop. Not that one. One more, I guess. Okay. So what are we looking at here? Is that what type of system is that in place here? It looks like, is that a wire?
There are 3 wire railings across those that you.
Are they
hard pressed for you to tell me that they're there? That's why they frequently get used.
They're a top wood railing.
How do you even keep tension on something like that? It looks like you could use that. The Walinda brothers could use that as a high wire act.
Yeah, they're screwed into each post. So as you screw them into the post, I believe that's how it's done. I think Keith's on here. He might be able to speak more to it. I believe they're kind of
stretch them out.
What was that?
They stretch them out by wiring them screwing them into the post.
Yeah, and that's how the tension's kept.
So we just had a question.
Green, but the top is wood. Is that what we're seeing here?
Yeah. So the thin wire doesn't serve great as a handrail. It keeps a pretty good barrier for people falling off. But the handrail itself, we originally proposed a thicker 2 pieces of wood as the handrail. We revised that to be a single 2x6 as a handrail instead.
Okay, so let me get this straight. So the picture that we're looking at right here is actually wire.
Correct. There's wire in this picture.
But your proposal right now is to use a 2x6 piece of wood?
Yeah, just how this one has it. The one that's shown here, it's a thinner piece of wood. It's not. I don't think this one's a 2x6, but it's very similar. So you can see that the handrail at the very top is a piece of wood.
Yeah.
But then below that's wires. So
go ahead.
Okay, so the purple there is actually wood, and then below it is the wire itself.
Correct.
Okay, so how do you not have any sag with a 2x6 piece of wood over a 10-foot span? If you lay a 2x
again, that I would defer to Keith, but I mean this dock's been there for quite some time, and those boards have remained, as you can see, pretty straight.
So why couldn't you just have a wire across the top? If you had enough tension on it.
My concern would be just somebody leaning on it. like when you bump up against it, it's fine. I've never seen it as an actual handrail itself. So I'd be open to that. But I've never seen it. So to have it as an actual handrail, we'd want a piece of wood, but I'm open to looking into that.
What
Okay.
about the alternative of rope? You
We do see
Mhm.
we do see rope get used. It's not invisible or close to invisible like the wire, so we normally propose that. If the natural aesthetic of rope would be preferred, which in some cases I know it has been, I believe the applicant, and I think Paul's on here, could speak to whether that's adequate to him, and we would be more than happy with that being a condition of approval,
Yeah.
that it gets switched out to rope.
Yeah, hi, Josh.
Can I ask the applicant, Mr. Tedeschi, if you're on the line? I totally understand from a liability standpoint and a design standpoint from the engineering firm on wanting to design something that met the standards, even though it just kind of sounds like a gray area whether or not this falls under the building code or not, as far as having a handrail for safety reasons. I can totally understand that. But it's you're the current homeowner. What is your stance on trying to make this maybe a little bit more aesthetically pleasing with either a rope or wire, etc.? And have you given that any thought?
Yeah, so hi, this is Paul Tedeschi. Thanks for the question. Appreciate the time and the interest. I mean, we've been trying to kind of work with Josh and the concerns of the Gulf River Association, et cetera, really just trying to make sure that we're kind of getting the access that we're looking for to the Gulf. From a safety standpoint, I mean, we feel like at 3 feet, we're comfortable not having railings. If it's something where the commission doesn't feel comfortable approving that, and just like Josh and Merrill have kind of put in their concerns on it, you know, we trust you guys and your judgment to kind of meet the criteria of the variance. If you felt rope was better, if you felt wire was better, or maybe the idea that that's the suggested method so that in the future, if a younger family moves in and wants to put a specific railing that you guys propose, that's fine. We don't need it. We're trying to appease the concerns that we're hearing from abutters and trying to keep it in balance with nature, so to speak, as best as possible. So I think these are all great proposals. I mean, a rope railing may not be the best.
I think,
Jill's
hi,
here as
this
well.
is Jill. I think one of our concerns is we're fine going to 3 feet wide, but if we have to put some sort of railing or, you know, a handrail at the top, we're not sure how we can make it usable as to carry like a paddleboard or a kayak. I mean, we're not sure with handrails on a 3-foot dock how that's even feasible. Which brings, you know, us potentially pull something down on the marsh, which we're trying not to do. So we are okay without handrails at 3 feet. We haven't really noticed any ledge in that area. And, you know, 3 feet falling into grass. I mean, the other option we've seen is just a little curb along the edge. Just if you're rolling something or walking, it just gives a little safety net if, you know, your foot kind of hits that little two-inch curb along the side. Also an Ipe.
Yeah. So I'm looking at my phone here, and I was unable to download or upload some photographs. There are a couple of docks that are actually, I guess, upstream or downstream, going over towards the Scituate side of the Gulf River that I was able to take pictures at. And you know, the first one there does have has railings. The second one, I don't know the width of it, but certainly no railings whatsoever. And then the third one, again, no railings, and it's a lot more aesthetically pleasing to look at that. I can certainly appreciate that aspect of it. So, well, so anyway, I hear your comments, and I'll open it back up to the commission for further questions.
Jay, I'd just like to say that, you know, as a practicing landscape architect, although there is no code that dictates outside, most interpretation by local building authorities is that if a platform of any sort is over 30 inches, that you need to have a handrail on it. Obviously, there are a lot of situations where people choose not to have handrails, but certainly from a liability standpoint, it opens up the owner, the designer, the builder, everyone kind of falls in behind that. So I mean, I think from, you know, the world of code is always in conflict with the world of aesthetics, but I think that in this case, the designer has looked at mitigating the impact of that rail by using kind of the industry standards, which is something that you, if you did start to slip, you can grab onto a wooden rail at the top, and the cable rails keep the visual impact down as much as you can. So I just offer that up.
Yeah, I certainly appreciate that. On a personal note, you know, looking at this in reality, is, you know, my son's in a wheelchair. So everywhere he goes, I push him in that damn wheelchair. So if I were thinking, you know, if I were visiting someone and pushing even an elderly person, etc., walking them out there, I'm looking at this window here and trying to measure 3 feet over that distance. It's not a very wide span. So I can certainly appreciate and understand why railings would need to be in there. Jeff Summers, I don't know if I've had given you an opportunity to speak a little bit more about this. Do you want to share some comments?
So, yeah, I already commented. I was just basically talking about the narrowing of the dock and the lowering of the dock.
Okay.
I didn't really have anything more beyond that.
All right, so I have Jim Porter. I've been answering a bunch of questions here. They've been fairly straightforward. I have a request for Jim Porter who would like to speak as an abutter. I will entertain that. Jeff, if you would bring Jim up to be a panelist to allow him to speak, that would be great. And Jim, I appreciate you wanting to speak. You need to take yourself off mute here in a second. Feel free to put the video on if you want. It's not necessary, but I'd like to limit this to a couple minutes. But I will turn the Jim. You're still on mute.
There we go.
There you go. I will turn it over to you, Jim, if you just want to state your name and address for the record here.
Yeah, my name is Jim Porter, and I'm a trustee for the Jane E. Riley Trust, which owns 81 Border Street, directly abutting to this property. My comments are that the property owner is seeking a variance from the Conservation Committee. And any kind of variance I'm going to ask you guys should be considered with extreme scrutiny, given the fact that it is granting relief to an applicant based on approved and adopted local rules and regulations. There are local rules and regulations. It couldn't just pass. They couldn't just get it. A variance was requested. And any kind of a variance should not be considered lightly. A major question is, has the applicant met the burden to grant them relief to a variance? We've all heard that the salt marsh is the most protected interest that cannot be altered, and this variance would allow alteration to the salt marsh. No question. There's going to be pillars that are knocked down through. Now, the engineer has shown us some docks that were put in and piers that were put in over marshes, and I don't know how you looked at them, but I looked at them as unsightly structures that were basically plowed over the marshes. And the one that was further down the river, which went out 300 feet, was approved by a previous conservation committee. I think if you are going to decide that this variance, you're going to need to sort of live with the fact that you're going to allow this to happen. This is going to set precedents for further developments and further piers across the salt marshes that run down the length of Border Street and Cedar Lane and the rest. with the 2 open properties that just sold behind the Red Barn, this is setting precedents on more pillars being driven into the saltwater marsh. They're going to lead to a dock possibly that's going to rest on the mud bottom. And this is a variance that they're asking. And I'm asking you guys that in order to take a look at this, you know, the owner of this property bought it knowing that this would require a variance, that this property has very, very limited areas that they could actually put the house up on, and they tucked it up further. And now they're trying to extend further in order to gain access to the marsh, which would require them to pound pillars into the marsh, which as a conservation commission, by local rules, you are not allowed to let that happen. That's what the rules say. And although, so they're looking for a variance to do this. Other conservation committees have allowed it before. I'm requesting that you don't. Has the standard for a variance that requires, this standard for a variance probably requires additional studies on habitat, on fisheries, et cetera. Have those been conducted? Eric asked an excellent question, but what happens to the bottom of the water? What happens on that mud? Has it been looked at? Has that any been done? This is a variance they're asking for. And if this is the legacy that the Concom wants to leave on the pristine Gulf River, once a proposal like this is approved, the area is never going to be the same because there's going to be another dock and another dock and another dock and another dock.
Okay, thank you for that. Just to, I appreciate all your comments. Anytime from the public raises comments, we do certainly appreciate that. And we do, if you're listening to the previous hearing, precedent setting is always something that's on our mind. Having said that, there are many docks and many crossings of the salt marsh within the town of Cohasset along the Gulf River there. So this would not be the first one. I don't know what the future holds, but it's certainly not the first dock that would be put in place.
Could I ask you a question though? Would this be your first dock that this conservation committee would approve that drives piers into the salt marshes that you are asked to protect?
You know, we've
been done before, no question.
Yeah,
it has absolutely been done before.
It has done before. It has been done before. Jeff, I don't want to put you on the spot here, but can you think of the projects that we've done out?
Yeah, the only 2 recent ones I can think of is 92A Beach Street and I don't know the house number, but it's Roger Wade's property off of Whitehead.
Right, and that was fairly significant.
I'm going to put marsh grass in that. Was there?
Yes, there was. There was a stretch of marsh, probably about 50 feet.
Right. So there have been projects that have been approved by this commission, again, that do cross the salt marsh and fairly significant projects, I will say as well.
Mr. Chairman, can I respond to Mr. Porter's suggestion that we're not taking this seriously? Mr. Porter, this is Chris McFarland, and I take every case that comes in front of the Conservation Commission very seriously. In fact, in this particular case, I've spent hours not only looking at our bylaws and rereading them to try to understand them. I've gone back to the state municipal law 310 to look at really what their intent was in the different laws. And what you'll find if you go back to the state laws is you will find that they quite clearly state that boardwalks are an acceptable construction through a salt marsh, that the piers are minimally invasive. And I just want you to be aware that we do not take these lightly. We do not issue variances lightly. and that this has taken quite a bit of time on the commission as a whole and individual commissioners, and that our research has been done. So I'm sorry if you think that this board does not do that, but I can assure you that this particular commissioner takes this very seriously, as I do every case that comes in front of us.
Yes,
Mr. Porter,
I did not mean in any way to suggest that you hadn't done your research or aren't doing this in the best of cases and with the best intent. I just wanted to number one, just say that you are the only path that will mitigate the number of these piers that are going to drive down. Like, I look at that Cedar Lane 300-foot monstrosity, and whoever approved that it's just a blight on nature, in my opinion, you know. And
okay,
and that's where I'm on it.
Mr. Porter, this is Eric Eisenhower. I have a certain agreement with you. I have, like Chris, spent hours going through our local regulations, trying to find some way I could support this project. And I'm absolutely convinced I cannot support this project. I cannot, in all honesty, support a variance. It doesn't meet the criteria. It doesn't meet the rules. And I will vote against it. So it's, you know, I may be a one-man band on that. But I firmly believe we have to, in the end, stand by our rules. There's nothing in our rules that says we have to currently approve a project because people 10 years ago possibly mistook something or made a mistake. And I don't look on things like precedent as something which has to govern us greatly now. We have to look at the regulations and where we are and have a thorough discussion. But I would have a problem granting a variance for this project. You know, when I look at the criteria of extenuating circumstances, rare and unusual circumstances, and the criteria that it will have absolutely no adverse effect on the resource area, there's no way I can agree that this project meets any of those criteria. So I will be voting against it, and I'm not in favor of the project, but I'm just one vote, all right? So you're not by yourself, Mr. Porter.
Okay, I'm looking at the Q&A here. I was just jumping back to the previous project here, the 33 Cedar Lane project. And just for the record, the crossing of the marsh was 420 feet across the salt marsh, and the dock was 4 feet wide. Wow. That was a project that was not too long ago approved by this Conservation Commission. So I do want to bring that into the record, in addition to the 92A Beach Street project. So there have been projects to the point of allowing crossings in the salt marsh. Further comments from the commission? I'm hearing some questions here. I know there are some concerns from the Gulf River. Again, there are many. I can certainly understand why anybody would want to put a dock out there. I can understand that. It's a beautiful area. Somebody would want to gain access to the river. It is certainly understandable how anybody would want to enjoy all the benefits of the river. There are virtually every home out there has some form of either a gangway or a crossing of the salt marsh. It seems like in the deeper areas, there's obviously not a need to drive any piles into the salt marsh or the earth for that matter, because it's already deep enough and they can go off of their existing property and have a gangway and a float out there. The other side of the Gulf River doesn't enjoy that benefit just because it's so shallow out there. And there's a salt marsh between the property and the actual an area where you could get a boat out there. But again, for the record, there are many, and those of you who've been out there, ever been on the river, there are many docks that are already out there now. So one thing I would ask the commission if you, if there was any thought to, if you think that there's environmental impact here, to potentially have a third party look at the impact and whether or not that is a feasible option. And again, I'm throwing this out there because I get getting a sense that some people may not be supportive of the project. I'm not asking for a vote, but I'm just throwing that out there. And I don't know how others feel. I know how you feel, Eric. But
let me just say, I would support an environmental study. It would be important to me that we had that done.
Okay.
I would support an environmental study. I think the applicant has done what we've asked of him to do in the revisions, but I am mixed with giving a variance. I think everyone should have access to the water, but I don't see this as being extremely, it doesn't meet the needs of a variance. So I'm kind of mixed on that.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Jay, I'm just going to speak up again because I have spent so much time looking into this. The reason that the state has suggested that piers should be acceptable is because they believe that the damage that can be caused in this resource area, if you don't have what we call in our bylaws a catwalk or a boardwalk, is far greater than the damage of putting a boardwalk through a salt marsh. Now, you know, I don't think it changes necessarily from one salt marsh to the other. If Eric said the environmental impact statement or study had to do with the bottom where it hits, you know, this is brackish water. This is not the same as when we're in the harbor and they're talking about you know, flounder habitat or shellfish habitat. It's a little different. So again, I'm just passing on information that I've read about, and I think it's important information.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And if you know, the Division of Marine Fisheries has already provided their letter, which they always do when we have a dock going into the harbor or anywhere in the water for that matter. And their recommendation, and it sounds like the engineer has satisfied that, is to put skids on the bottom of the dock so that the entire dock is actually not resting on the bottom, and it's just a thin piece of material that takes all of the force and the weight, as opposed to completely having this giant dock covering the entire area of the subsurface. So, you know, Division of Marine Fisheries, I think that area has been addressed as well. Any comments from other commissioners here? Getting the silent treatment. Well, let me I kind of get a sense of how Eric feels here, and I certainly understand that. I understand all, you know, I'm just the chair here. I'm just trying to facilitate the discussion and move this along. And I can certainly understand, you know, both sides here. On every application that we have in front of us, we have to look at the merits of the application. I understand that sometimes it's precedent setting. I agree with that. But I think we also have to look at what we have in front of us, and has the applicant, and this is a question that we all have to ask ourselves, is has the applicant done the very best that they can do here, and is it worthy of a variance? They have reduced the size of the dock. They have reduced the elevation of the dock. The Gulf River Association comments seem to have been addressed. At least most of the comments were original comments were addressed. The dock has been lowered in elevation. 2x6s rather than 2x8s are used now, so there's more light going in. It's not as wide. And there's the talk here about a wire railing in addition to a wood railing, etc. So I think that, and there's less intrusion on the marsh itself. So I think the revised plan is certainly a lot better than the first plan. The question is whether the plan is going to be approvable by the commission. So,
Mr. Chairman, may I ask you a question?
Yeah, absolutely.
I understand what you're saying. Of the 4 criteria that are necessary for us to agree on to grant a variance, which of those am I allowed to forget about? Because I have a problem.
None of them.
I go through all 4 and I say, I'm trying to make this thing happen, but I can't answer yes as I go through those. So I get hung up. And that's where I am right now. Okay, because we have rules, we have a document. And I know Chris goes into the state wetland regulations. I believe that. But we have a local document which in many ways differs from the state wetland regulations and has taken exceptions to it. So
haven't heard from any of the Alex. I'd love to hear from you a little bit here. I know you've been around this town for a while. You've been on this commission for this is your last meeting, Alex. But I know you listen. You're a boater. You've been in and around the harbor your entire life. You've been on this commission for about 10 plus years now. And I really would like to, got to put you on the spot here in your last 10 or 15 minutes of fame and get your sense on this project.
I approve of this project. I believe that they're entitled to it. They've done a lot of work. They've done a good improvement on it. There are many other boardwalks in town. We've approved many of them. I don't see any reason to refuse this one. I'm 100% behind it.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
Is that enough?
That short and sweet, I guess.
That's how I operate.
Okay.
Hey, go get a beer, Alex.
I appreciate that, and again, you know, Alex, I asked you because you've been around in those 2 docks that were approved in the past few years. You were part of that, in addition to many other docks. Those are just the docks that went over the salt marsh that this commission has approved. That's not including all of the other docks that this commission has approved.
That's correct. That's correct. Look, there are all kinds of crimes in this country and all kinds of personalities, but I don't like hypocrites. And to disapprove this one would be very hypocritical, in my opinion.
Yeah. Any other commissioners who haven't voiced an opinion that want to? Not required. Even our associate, just throwing it out there, an opportunity to comment.
Hi, Jay. This is James. I do support this project.
Okay. All right. Chris, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sorry. I can see both sides with Eric and with Chris, but I lean more to what Eric has been saying.
Okay. I appreciate that. Getting a sense that we're almost kind of at a split here, and I don't like to poll everybody, but I'm getting a sense that we're gonna having some opinions on this one. Oh boy. Marianne, any want to add any comments to this?
I think why don't we bring in a third party just to evaluate, and then we could just make the final decision from there. I think it would be comfortable.
I would find the environmental habitat wildlife audit very useful, Jay.
Okay. I would.
Right. I mean, there, as Mr. Porter indicated, there are other properties coming up. I think even 81 Border Street may be coming up, I understand too. So there may be changes, and I just want to make the right decision. I would love to hear what a third party said.
All right, I very much appreciate that. And I think that I'm not opposed to that whatsoever. I think that that would further help this commission. And as discussed here and mentioned, there potentially could be more docks down the line, other areas. So I would support an environmental habitat review by a third party. I would like to propose that. I think that that would help this commission in making this decision. It sounds like we're probably at a roughly like a 3-3 vote here on approving versus denying this project, and I don't want to get to that point. I think if it would be helpful to have a third party look at that, and then that would be the direction that we would go. And we can narrow that down to what the third party would be looking at. I think obviously we're looking at the environmental impact on the pile driving, et cetera. If you want to call it pile driving, drilling, whatever mechanism is being put in place here, and we have that outline, to the installation of the timber structures, et cetera, along that marsh. So if that helps with the making of a decision here with the commission, then I think we should do that. Anybody opposed to that? Okay.
I support that.
All right. I think that's the only way we're gonna come to a conclusion. Otherwise, just looking at the numbers here, it's probably gonna fall within a 3-3 vote or somewhere in there. So,
Jay,
yes.
Who do you suggest, or what discipline do you suggest becomes the third party reviewer for this?
When you say what discipline, what do you mean by that?
Well, are we looking at a marine wetland specialist? Are we looking at a just a general wetland specialist? Are we looking at a
Well, we're gonna have to do a little. Yeah, we're gonna have to do a little bit of research, right? Our go-to engineer is Merrill Engineering, so I think Merrill Engineering is gonna get a pass on this one. So we will have to look at that and do a little research as far as who the most suitable person would be. But it would be looking at, again, the environmental impact on the marsh itself. So I can't answer that exactly, who the title of that person would be. So we'd have to do a little bit of research on that.
Jay, I hate to put you on the spot, but you put everyone else on the spot. What's your feeling on this project?
I have to say I'm really torn on this project. I can appreciate, I stand by the regulations. I understand that there's a granting of a variance, and I understand the section 19 language here regarding the salt marsh, and I'm reading it. The salt marshes should not be filled, altered, or otherwise destroyed in any circumstances. I don't know that they're being filled. Whether or not are they being destroyed, that's a good question. And are they being altered? Are we changing the temperature? Are we changing, when you talk about what the definition of alteration, it's a change in drainage characteristics. Is there a change in drainage? Is there a change in temperature? Is there a change in BOD, biochemical oxygen demand, or TSS, total sustainable solids, or suspended solids, excuse me. I don't see any of those factors kicking in. I certainly understand that anyone would want to put a dock out there. We've approved these projects in the past. And, are we setting precedents by doing this one? We've already set precedents by installing the 2 previous docks in the past few years. So, if we don't approve this one, then we can never approve any other dock that even touches any salt marsh moving forward in the future. So, we set precedents no matter which way we go. I don't want to be the deciding vote here. I think if I had to vote, I would be leaning to approve the project. However, I would feel a lot more comfortable by having somewhat of a third party review. But I would be leaning to approving the project. and I'm hesitant to do that, but I would be leaning in that direction. As you know, the state, we have our own Cohasset bylaws, but the state standards are less stringent than that. And as you mentioned, Chris, if the dock doesn't go in, what's stopping the homeowner from every weekend just basically walking across that salt marsh with a canoe or dragging a canoe or dragging a kayak or dragging something across that salt marsh all weekend long, every weekend long, hauling a 5-gallon jug of gasoline across there to get out to a small boat that they leave out there, etc., back and forth. So is the installation of a pier less intrusive or less damaging on the salt marsh than it would be by just human traffic? So, I go back and forth with it all.
To jump in, and maybe I'm out of line here. I don't know how else to sort of jump in here. This is Jim Porter. The local rules say it's not supposed to happen. I can't get away from it. So yes, you approved 2 of them previously. Maybe you were wrong to do that.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Jim. And again, we take, if every single project that came in front of us, as I don't want to go back. You just heard that if you listen to the previous application where we were not supportive of the glyphosate because of the issue, the large area there. Every project we look at its own individual merits, and I think we're looking at the individual merits on this one. And the applicant has made some substantial changes to the revised project. So anyway, I want to bring up Keith Wallow has been wanting to talk here. So Keith, I am going to let you speak because I think there we go here. Keith, you should be allowed to speak now. If you want to unmute your phone or computer, I'll give you the floor for a couple minutes here. You have to unmute yourself first, Keith.
He's the mysterious K.
I thought my whole name was in there, but I guess it wasn't.
That's all right. For the record, just your name and title, please.
I don't really have a title. My first name is Keith. My last name is Wallow, and I own Harbor Mooring. So I'd like to just say a couple of quick things. My life and my livelihood is on the marsh, so I wouldn't be doing anything to harm any marsh at any time for anyone. So sometimes I don't understand all these questions and how these things go back and forth. But something that was just said a minute ago, I just built the dock on the Gulf River. I finished it last week. It's not in Cohasset, so I guess it's apples to oranges. But it's 160 feet long, and I think it was Justin that just said that they could make a path on the marsh. Well, this family lived there for 2 years without a dock, and they made that path in the marsh. And there was a specific line cut right through the marsh where they walked every day to get their boats back and forth. They had to stop using it when they applied for their Chapter 91. And in that year and a half that it took for the Chapter 91 to go through, that little path is almost gone. Now, I built this dock. There's some, places where I walked on the marsh, but I can guarantee you by next year, it'll be back to exactly green and what it is because I've built 100 of them now. The other thing I'd like to say is that those other docks that you're talking about, the 440-foot one, I also built that one. If you look at the pilings where they were driven into the ground, there is no disturbance after 3.5 years or whatever it's been. There's also, you guys keep saying 2 other docks that built. Over the last 4 years, I think I've built 5 docks in the Gulf River, not all in Cohasset, some in Situate. And I'm getting ready to start another one in Situate right now at 191 Border Street, I think it is, or somewhere up there. So the damage that's done to a marsh to build a dock is almost nil. Within a year, you won't even be able to see it. So I guess all I'm saying is that, yes, it's my livelihood and it's what I do. But like I said at the beginning, on the other half to that, I wouldn't damage the marsh because then I wouldn't have a livelihood. So I think it goes both ways. And if you look at all the different docks that are out there, I'm sure some of them are legal and some of them are illegal because they don't have Chapter 91s. But they all have, all the marsh grass has grown back under them. Everything's fine underneath there. There's no issues. And this dock that we're talking about right now, I think it was 49 feet was going to be over the marsh. The rest was going to be over a creek. That's the smallest infringement on the marsh that I can remember building in a long time, other than maybe Smith, who's in Cohasset, which is right around the corner. So I guess that's just my 2 cents. I just don't I guess I don't understand how you can do a precedent and then break a precedent and say that it's no good now, but it was okay before, when I can show you where it's fine to do this. Thank you for for your time.
Okay. I appreciate that, Keith. Thank you. Jeff Summers, do you have any comments to any of this?
You're muted, Jeff.
Yeah, you're muted,
Oh,
Jeff.
sorry. Yeah, so I guess I kind of feel like the way a lot of everybody else does. I mean, looking at it from, now I know there is the bylaw, looking at it from the state standpoint, like Chris has mentioned, you know, it's a perfectly acceptable activity, providing that you meet certain requirements, which they have met with their design of this dock. You know, the only thing to consider is, you know, again, the one sentence in the bylaw, and, you know, so like you said, Jay, the marsh isn't being filled. I don't believe it's being destroyed. So really it's, you know, what is the alteration of the marsh? You know, I think, you know, the alteration, I think, is, you know, like Keith just said, you know, looking at other docks, the alteration, I think, is minimal. You know, you go to any one of those other docks that meets the minimum height requirement, the salt marsh, you know, looks just like most other salt marsh outside of the dock. I think really the only actually altered part of the marsh would be where the footings stand. So, I mean, we've approved, you know, plenty of these docks in the past. I mean, if I were a voting member, I would be in favor of it also. I'm not, so it's up to you guys, I guess.
What?
Right.
Oh,
So again, you know, as I go back to, and again, I remain torn on the issue. To what Keith had raised as far as the issue goes, and while I've been doing this, I'm looking back at my phone at some of the pictures that I've taken, and looking at some of the other docks that have encroached upon the marsh. And you know, we're talking about 49 feet here compared to other docks that we have approved. The one on was it the Cedar Lane or Beach Street there, 440 feet of crossing of the salt marsh. That's almost 10 times the amount of what this dock is encroaching on the salt marsh, you know, and other docks as well. And we've approved, you know, how many docks have we approved where there's, you know, forget about the salt marsh, that have basically gone out into the harbor? You know, in a perfect world, yeah, we're trying to limit that a little bit in the environmental damage, but in all, on the flip side of that, I can understand why somebody would want to enjoy the benefits of the Gulf River. So, you know, I leave it at that. But I think that there is fairly minimal disturbance to the salt marsh. Although clearly, you know, if you want to use the word disturbance, yeah, if you're going to drive some piles into the salt marsh, then there's some form of a disturbance. So again, I go back and forth and be torn on the issue. I would be supportive of a third party if you feel that a third party is needed, but the votes may, you know, I'm not gonna, I haven't gone around and polled everybody. We don't typically like to do that, but if we need to do that, and then there's a 3-3 vote, then I would recommend that we go to a third party. Or, you know, maybe there's, if you're hung up on the alteration aspect of it, I can see that. Or if there's another issue as far as the construction of the dock and putting specific conditions on the dock, like no lights, or if it would appease any of the commissioners that were adamantly opposed to it, if you didn't want railings on the dock and wanted to condition it without railings and more aesthetically pleasing, that's something to discuss. I know it's 10 o'clock at night, but it's the last thing on our agenda, and we're here to discuss it. So I don't know if there are any conditions that could be placed on it that would be helpful to anybody.
Mr. Chair, can I speak?
Absolutely. Go ahead, Josh. Take the weight off me.
Seems like the biggest concern here is the disturbance to the marsh, and I think most of us can agree that the direct disturbance to the marsh is the piles. And if that's the case, would it appease the commissioners that are currently against it if we planted the equal square footage of the posts that is being disturbed, if we plant that in an area next to the salt marsh that's currently there?
And what do you mean by plant that? Can you just further describe that a little bit of what that proposal would be?
I'd have to have, so I mean, if it was, if you were for that, if the condition of approval is that we basically replicate the square footage of the salt marsh for the posts that are within the salt marsh, I think we'd be more than happy with that condition.
So
that gets rid of the disturbance.
How would you go about doing that replication?
Explain that.
Well, I would have to talk to a wetland scientist to it. That's a little bit outside of my expertise, but it would be more than likely bringing in salt marsh from elsewhere and placing the square footage. Like I said, I need, what it would be is, I don't know if Jeff has done it before in town, but what it has been on other projects is the wetland scientist has worked with the agent to ensure, this case it's a little bit difficult due to the fact that you've got a salt marsh going up against a BBW. So the commission would have to value one resource more than the other. So you'd be replacing a portion of the BVW with a salt marsh, basically. There is some area, I believe, along the tree line, not a wetland scientist, but I believe that would have been counted as upland, where salt marsh may be able to be planted, but that's getting awfully close to the property line. But I think as far as, the salt marsh plants are available to be brought in, I think doing an area of the, square footage of the post is the direct disturbance. It seems to be the biggest thing that the commissioners are referencing here. So if we bring in a square footage of salt marsh and plant for that square footage, it seems like that's, a net zero of disturbance.
I'm not sure of a bit of replication planting out of the way in the corner of the river is going to suffice for 150 or whatever the foot long dock is running out into the river itself, with all the aesthetic considerations, wildlife and all that. So I personally think we should go ahead, Jay, with the proposal that you made, which is looking at the environmental impact and all that. And I think we'll be in a much better position to take a decision then.
Jay, I'm willing to, go along with the rest of the commission on whether or not we have a third party. But I would like to say that in my research, I have read quite a number of case studies for salt marsh restoration. And if Jeff can bring up the site plan again, you'll see there's actually a couple areas of erosion directly against the river here. And they actually quite well are suited for restoration. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be at the back. It could actually be at the front. And the way they do, there's a number of ways to do it. But one of the ways they do it is they actually, so go down all the way to the river if you would. So you can see, you see that little nose that's sticking out with that cove there. That's an area that's probably gotten washed out because the neighbor's dock is probably hard faced, and you're getting a little bit of wave action in there, which is causing it to erode. So one of the ways they do this is that they actually harvest the Spartina and they wrap it into large wattles, and then they basically build a wall out of that, and then it it basically reseed the seed that's in there actually starts to grow out of it, and you actually have basically in a man-made fashion, you've kind of recreated the peat that is the base of a salt marsh. So now I'm not an expert, so I'm not gonna stamp that drawing. Josh would have to get his people, but I do think this. You can see how this whole area is kind of like dug back a little bit. I think there's a lot of opportunity to actually extend the salt marsh, kind of right in some of those areas. And if Josh thinks that potentially that's a mitigation they'd be willing to undertake, I'd be in even more support of the project. Because I think what it does is it would prove for future projects that this is a possibility and something to be considered.
Yeah, so Chris, you're saying like in these setback areas, like in here and in here?
Well, those would probably be the easiest ones to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, the reality is you could do that whole area.
Right. Yep.
And you're still going to. I mean, just by the nature of the way water works, the river's coming down this way. You're still going to get some scouring here as it comes around, but at this point, the scouring is only going to remove salt marsh. Any kind of remediation along the front edge is going to help to at least protect that for some period of time until some kind of catastrophic event, and then you might lose some of it. And at that point, the homeowner is going to love building salt marsh so much they're going to just keep going and going and going.
Josh, having heard that, is that something you would be willing to entertain?
I just think it'd be probably a better effort than an environmental review. I would like to reference the DMF letter. They have a plethora of studies that they do. They do them all the time. They understand the impacts that piers have to the resource areas and coastal areas. They're gonna, I imagine a third party will find the exact same results that they do on their studies that they reference in their letter. Those studies are, while not the best read or most entertaining read, they are informative, and they were on the original letter for DMF. That's what they're signing off on, is they reviewed the impacts of piers to these resource areas and said that it is negligible. So I understand that Cohasset itself has the bylaw on the salt marsh, or regarding the salt marsh. So I feel like doing a mitigation for that area of the piles would be a better effort or more cost effective in just jumping to that than doing a study and then coming to a conclusion where some mitigation might have to happen after it. It just seems to be skipping a step.
Okay. All right. I'm certainly amenable to that. Any commissioners not amenable to that proposal?
I think we need to do the other study also. I mean, if the environmental and the wildlife study comes back and says, Eisenhower, you have nothing to worry about, things are well taken care of, fine. We don't need to do any mitigation, all right? I'm concerned about the grass, I'm concerned about the nature there, I'm concerned about the bottom, and if we just go ahead and we do the replication planting, we're not facing that issue. I'd be happy to do both of them, Jay.
Trying to pull up the DMF, the Division of Marine Fisheries letter here.
I have it.
Yeah. Yeah, they focus more in on the shading, etc., and talk about the regulations of the pier elevation. And if you look at this, they want the pier to be at least 6 feet off the salt marsh, and we're lowering it down to less than that.
How about I make a motion to have a third party review? I'd like to do that.
I'll second it.
Yep.
All right, having heard, so what we have on the table here is a motion to have a third-party review of the environmental / wetland impact on the salt marsh, et cetera. I don't have an exact verbiage here. We will have to coordinate that, and certainly in conjunction with the engineer and our agent. But that is the proposal that's on the table. Is there any formal comment before we take that to vote?
I would actually like to ask a question. Jill Tedeschi, homeowner. I'm just curious, are we the first people that have been asked to do this third-party review? Has anyone else ever been asked to do the third-party? We're just curious because this is new to us. Has this ever been brought up before to any dock proposals? Has anybody else been asked to do this?
As far as I'm aware of, no, not with respect to a dock proposal. We have had third-party reviews on other projects, but no, not with respect to a dock proposal.
Jay, I think we actually did have a third-party review. I can't remember the address.
On the dock?
Yeah, it was on that dock that was it was. I can't remember the address, but yes.
Was it Beach Street, Chris? Was it the Beach Street?
No,
the
it wasn't
400-foot one?
It wasn't. I don't think it was Beach Street. I think it was the one prior to that where it was being connected to the ledge and et cetera. And I think we actually did have someone look at it.
It was on the other side of Little Harbor.
I don't remember that at all.
You're talking about the one on Nickel out on the island.
Okay, well, wait, hold on, one at a time here. James, James, have the floor there. Go ahead.
He's referencing the one on Nichols that's out on the island. It's like a very contemporary house out on the island that changed hands, 2-3 years ago.
I don't remember a third party on that. Jeff Summers, do you remember having any third parties since you've been with this commission?
I don't remember a third party.
No, I don't recall on a dock.
No.
I'm not saying there was a third party review. I don't recall one either, but I just know the application that he's talking about is the one that was on the Nichols Island.
So I guess just my question would be, given that we've been talking about our dock sort of being one of the shortest, I guess my husband and I are wondering why the red flag has come up with this particular one as it relates to the third party review. If we're one of the smaller docks that is up for review compared to the last ones, that the 450, and like what makes ours different? Why are you asking for that?
So that's the $1 million question. As far as I've looking back at similar projects, the similar projects that have come up that were shared with me were the project the dock that was put in 2013 and the other dock that was put in 2017. And as I had mentioned here, the dock that was put in a few years ago was 440 feet across the marsh, which is over 10 times the length of this dock. So, I continue to be torn here. I'm just a chair stuck right in the middle of all this. I hope you can appreciate that. I would love to be one of the other commissioners, and that day is coming really soon, where I don't have to facilitate all this discussion and figure out where we're going to go, because I think we have kind of a split vote here, or without getting it to vote. So I don't want to take it to vote, and then your project get denied, and then you're basically at ground zero and with no project in front of you. So I'm trying to work with you here. I think the commission is trying to, at least from the sounds of it, is willing to work with here. And a third, or I'm not hearing anybody bringing this to a vote. No. So what I'm hearing is that a third party would be very helpful with influencing a vote here, or gathering further information on what the impacts are, because we really don't know. We'd like to think that, and I looked at all of the pitches all along, and I completely agree. looking at the pictures that I see, and even going up and down the Gulf River, wherever there were piles that were driven in, the marsh is still thriving. It's very green. The marsh is coming up beside it, underneath it, all around it, you know, but I don't know what the actual impacts are to the marsh. I haven't been out there to look at it, but visually speaking, it seems to be thriving along. And I agree, this is much more minimal than the last project. That last project was 3+ years ago. We have a little bit of a different commission. Probably half of us were on that commission 3 or 4 years ago. But I'm not hearing that everyone's going to flat out, you know, I don't want to bring it to vote and your project get denied. And I, you know, as the chair here, I'm trying to do the right thing and try and work with everybody and come to some form of a conclusion that, or some resolution that that everyone's happy. Nobody's ever going to be happy at the end of the day, but we'd like to think that everybody is. So if it's a third party review that's going to get this moving forward, then let's do it.
Can we just?
Joe, let me just say,
yeah,
the area we're working in is a do not disturb area. We shouldn't be building anything there by the rules. So, and the rules say what you want to do shouldn't be done because of the environmental impact. We're bringing in somebody from the outside to say, hey, chances are there isn't much environmental impact. It's safe to go ahead. So I think what Jay's doing by bringing in a third party would be, in the end, very beneficial for the project.
Eric, if that's the case, is that going to change your vote?
That's
right. And we're losing Alex. It sounds like he's dropping off
That's
the
our
board.
question.
And we'll start with another.
We have a yes
commissioner.
from Alex, and so if this is his last meeting, and we're at, you know, potentially
I don't think the cookie crumbles that way.
Well,
I think we're all,
we
we're
appreciate
all open. We're
Yep.
all open
Jake,
to the thoughtful comments of
I'd
the
like to-
environmental engineer.
I have a question, Jay. How do we find a neutral third party engineer? I mean, how do we qualify that?
Well, well, obviously, we would have to just, you know, I don't believe it would be a very costly study. So that's the first thing that we would look at. We would not have, if the scope of work were less than $10,000, which it would be, we would not have to go out with a request for proposal. We could just hand pick, and I would rely on Jeff Summers, our agent, to do a little bit more work with that. We would hand pick whether it be a wetland scientist, et cetera. And again, I don't know the proper person right now. We'd have to do a little bit of research. We would hand pick that individual. They would do a quick site visit. They would look at the plan, and they would come up with their review of the project.
And you feel that you found that type of person would be neutral in their discovery.
Oh, it would absolutely, completely, 100% be neutral, and that's why we look at as a third party. And you know, whether or not there would be some slight recommendations, you know, things to consider. You know, what you're talking about, which sound like the applicant might be willing to explore, is a salt marsh restoration project. You know, which would be a great project, but where does that start and where does that begin? I mean, you know, that could go on, you know, forever. And so are we gonna, for every dock that's proposed from here on into eternity, which there are probably gonna be more, are we gonna require a salt marsh restoration project? So I think just having a potential third party reviewing it and looking at and almost giving it, you know, either a blessing or some recommendations would really be in the best interest of everybody.
For me, why I propose this is I just want to make sure that we have looked at all corners of this, and will this project make an impact or not? Already the state has said it has not in the letter submitted, or it also said it need the dock, it needed to be higher by 6 feet too. But I just want to make sure that we have a record that we looked at everything at all corners, and that when I make a decision that I have seen everything, and that would make me most comfortable in my decision. And every project is different, in my opinion. It doesn't matter. And also, this project is Cohasset. It is not Situate. And that makes an impact to me.
Thank you. And to Mr. and Mrs. Tedeschi, I can certainly understand, your concerns, and you have to put yourself in the Conservation Commission's shoes. This is not an easy job. I thought myself I'd be downstairs about 2 hours ago, and here it is 10:20 at night here. We're all volunteers, and we get grilled
We
for
need to
every
get paid more.
we
need
get
to make more money.
grilled on every decision that we make, whether we approve a project or deny a project. We get grilled over and over as to why we did this. And, we've been informed now from legal counsel, if you're going to make a decision, make sure you have all of the information in front of you. And, having a potential split vote or undecided vote one way or the other, having just a fresh set of eyes, looking at an independent review of the project. I can tell you right now, I would be much more in favor of supporting the project. I'd like to support the project, but with a further review, I could 100% say I fully support the project 100%. If the findings of a third-party review were fairly minimal and they could be corrected.
Sure.
So I'll give you my word on that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we had a motion and we had a second, and then we had a long round of comments here. Well, do I hear any further comment from the commission? All right. So I'm not hearing any further comment. I'm not hearing any other proposals out there. The motion we have on the table by Mary Ann is for a third-party independent review. I seconded it for the purpose of the voting. And we will, Jeff, we will explore the language, but the third-party review would be looking at the environmental impact to the salt marsh with respect to the pile driving, et cetera. And we would limit that to that scope of work. So having heard a motion and a second, I'm going to do this by roll call vote, asking each one of the commissioners if they're supportive of that. And I will start with you, Chris, because you're right in front of my screen. If you just state your name and yes or nay for the record, please. Chris?
Nay.
Eric?
Yes.
Alex?
Nay.
Got to write this down. James?
Nay.
Mary Ann?
Yes, supporting it.
That leaves me, Jay. I would support it. So here we are back with a 3-3 vote. I would really like to try and work with everybody here on this plan. I know we still have a couple of the, we've heard from Jason Porter. Are there any other abutters on the line here, or anybody from the Gulf Association? The Gulf Association was submitted a comment letter early on to the project. They also submitted a comment letter, I believe it was earlier this afternoon. I was looking at that letter a few minutes ago. Basically, what that letter stated was they were more concerned now about the railings, and that was really the issue from the Gulf Association, was the railings itself. So is there anybody from the Gulf that would like to speak, or anyone from the audience who would like to raise an issue here?
Mr. Chair, I know you asked for butters. Can I just make one last comment?
Yes.
I understand third-party reviews. I completely respect them. They're a great tool. With it being split, I'd like to remind the commission that peers are the most reviewed project there is. They go through so many levels of review between the state, local, and federal level. Just looking at that CC on that DMF letter, the amount of agencies that it goes to review, there's a reason for it. They understand that it's an unusual circumstance. Piers in themselves are an unusual project. You're allowing a structure through a resource area. You can't put a house in a resource area. but piers are allowed to go through the structure or through the resource area. So them in themselves are unusual. So if you're going to grant somebody the ability to access water, which they have a right to, they have to be able to go through that resource area. If it happens to be a salt marsh, unless it's thin enough that you can't put a pile through it, there's no way to do it. So I understand that you want another set of eyes on it, and I was fine with it. I know that it's split is the reason why I'm saying this, that there is multiple levels of review to this. It's not like a normal project where it's just DEP and the Conservation Commission. There are at least 3 or 4 other agencies that have their shot at reviewing this and judging the environmental impact. The client still will have to go through with those other agencies to get their review on the environmental impacts.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I was just actually looking at the letter as we speak here. So,
if I could speak, it's Jim Porter, just for a second as an abutter. There's been a lot of mention of a 440-foot pier off of Cedar Lane. I would suggest all of you go to Google, put it on a map, and look at a satellite, and you'll see that it's 440 feet, but it's about 100 yards from the nearest house. And there's a huge swath of marsh that runs along the river. This smaller pier is being put on a much smaller piece of salt marsh in a much smaller corner of the world here.
I appreciate that, Jim. So while I'm doing this, I'm actually on Google Earth right now, and I don't know the exact property, but literally I go upriver on the same side of the Tedeschi property. If you literally go around the corner on Google Earth, there's a dock that crosses the salt marsh that's in place now. And there's another dock in the brand new house that was built on Black Horse Lane that is a significant crossing of the salt marsh as well. And, you know, it continues along. On the other side of Supper Island, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and we probably get into the Situate border there. But all of those docks are, again, significantly crossing the salt marsh. So
when were they built?
That I don't know, and I can't comment on that. So
the rules between conservation have changed dramatically since a lot of these have built.
I appreciate that. Our rules and regulations were adopted in 2001. So upwards of 20 years ago now. So any dock built on the Gulf River in the past 20 years would have had to gone in front of the town. Let me ask a question back to the applicant as far as we're not hearing anything from the Gulf Association. I did want to address their letter that came in, and their letter was respect to the railings on the dock here. What consideration would you give to the railing system here?
So I had a great meeting with Ted Lubitz, who I've known. He's been kind of my front person with the Gulf River Association. He and Dave Dwyer. Dave's the president. Dave has one of the large docks that you referenced. He's off of South Main there. That dock's actually not that old. Keith, who's on the call, can validate that he rebuilt his dock just, I think, 2 years ago. We're open. We've made these concessions and changes based on the feedback we got. I've been talking with Josh, our engineer, over the last couple of weeks since the last meeting. We've lowered it. We've lowered the height, the width. Sorry for ever putting the idea of lights out there for safety. We can use a flashlight. We're open to whatever concessions or terms or conditions that you would want to put. We want to access the Gulf. To Mr. Porter's comment, he has used our property to store his dock. I pointed that out to Jeff Summers and other members of the commission when they were out there. You can actually see the damage he's caused. We will be engineering our property. And I think some of the things that Mr. McFarland brought up from that remediation of the marsh is because of his dock swinging. It actually extends onto our property at Lomine Tide, which is actually our property, not his, but that's another matter. But I think his concern is because his primary view is over our property. We have plenty of setback. And so in talking with the Gulf River Association, back to your point, they're very supportive of docks, but they just wanted to make sure that we were taking into consideration all of the impacts. I think visual aesthetics are the biggest concern they have. They have no concern with Keith and his ability to drive pilings. In fact, he has built and maintains docks for all of them. It's more aesthetic. So we are open to whatever concessions you impose upon the permitting of this dock as it relates to railings, if you feel that's an important component.
And also just one other comment, we actually have a number of other abutters that look directly at our dock who are fully supportive of the dock.
And if that's important, we can get those in letter. In fact, I was hoping that Mr. Lubitz, I think the timing kind of switched him here. He had said he was going to join in, but certainly happy to have him reach out to you, Jay, or to Jeff or whoever. But if it's important to get other neighbor supports, obviously as a direct abutter, the Porters have their own position, but we feel confident that the other neighbors are comfortable, especially given the concessions that we've made since the last meeting.
All right, so I appreciate that. Actually, Ted is on the line. I'm not going to put him on the spot. If he wants to speak, by all means, but I'm going to share my screen with everybody here. And I just wanted to show you, if I could pull it up here. Where is it? Hopefully I can do this. I'm going to try and share my screen. Jeff, if I can't do it, I want to be able to share the screen correctly here.
What did you want to see?
I want to show the letter
Oh. Okay, hold on.
from the Gulf River Association.
Yeah, it'll take me a minute to find it.
And it's probably not coming up. If you could just show us the letter. So actually, I'm going to read the letter here. This is a letter that was submitted earlier today, dated July 23rd. I'm going to read the letter for you. It says, "Dear Mr. Chairman, the Gulf Association has reviewed the revised plan proposal for 75 Border Street and is appreciative of the efforts made by the applicant to address our stated concerns. From our June 23rd letter, we conducted a site visit with the property owner on July 21st, and from our perspective, the new plan is improved. While there is still alteration to the salt marsh, which triggers the need for variance, the applicant has made efforts with their new plan to reduce its impact. However, we feel that further efforts need to be made to improve aesthetics. The applicant cites 33 Cedar Lane as precedent for their proposal. Accordingly, it is a strong preference of the Gulf Association the applicant seek and make good faith efforts to eliminate the railings from their plan. Similar to 33 Cedar Lane, as you can see from the photo below, the walkway at 33 Cedar Lane protects the interests of the salt marsh while disappearing into the landscape to protect the aesthetics of the area. Thank you for your consideration. Sincerely, David Dwyer, the Gulf Association." And there is a photograph of the actual pier itself. This is a 3 foot by 3 foot pier with no railings. And I don't know, Jeff, if you have a chance to pull it up or not, but we're at 10:30 at night here, and this is going on for a while. As I've stated earlier, there are numerous piers along the area of the Gulf River. While I'm very torn on this project, we have other projects in town that have been approved by the commission, or if they weren't approved by this commission, they were approved prior to the bylaws that are significantly larger than this crossing of the 49 feet of the salt marsh. While we set precedents on every single project, I feel that this project is a much limited in scope as some of the other large scale projects. So while I supported a third party review, as you witnessed, there was a 3-3 split vote. So that is not going to happen and move forward. And there's the letter that Jeff has brought up. And this was from the Gulf Association, which obviously I don't have to say anymore. It's the Gulf River Association, and their main comment here is the aesthetic. So would the applicant be amenable to proposing a dock that did not have the 4-foot railings on there? I'll just ask that straight out question.
Yes.
Okay. Okay. All right. So do we have any further comment from the commission? I'm going to make a motion. Jay Pimpari would like to make a motion to approve this project, approve the installation of a dock at 75 Border Street, to issue a variance. We're going to need a variance and an order of conditions issue a variance for work within the 50 for installation of a dock with a specific condition that there be no lights installed on the dock, and also that there be no railings installed along the dock itself. And the dock be replicated to the revised plan that was submitted about a week or so ago, or the latest plan that was submitted by Merrill Engineering. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Alex Coinis. We're going to do this by roll call vote. So you've heard that this is a work for variance in the 50, and with a specific order of condition or conditions, we're going to make another motion in a minute for an order of conditions. So we'll do this all by roll call vote. Jay Pimpare, aye. Alex, please. So when we go through, please state your name and yay, nay, or abstention regarding the project approval. Alex. Alex, you're on mute.
I'm sorry, I just muted. Alex Coinis, aye.
Chris. Chris, you're still there.
He's on mute.
Chris McFarland, aye.
Marianne.
Marianne Weatherall, nay.
James.
He's on mute.
James Roseback, aye.
Eric.
Nay.
Jay Pimpare, aye. That vote passes 4-2. Jay Pimpare, make a motion to issue an order of conditions for the installation of the dock or a pier at 75 Border Street with the same order of conditions, that there be no lights on the dock and that there be no hand railings at all, and dock be of what's revised. A revised plan will be submitted to the Conservation Commission. I want to amend, make this a special order. A revised plan be submitted to the Conservation Commission by close of business 1 week from today, close of business being 4 o'clock on July 30th, that a revised plan be submitted to the commission, and the revised plan reflect that there will be no hand railings on the dock, and a specific statement that no electricity be on the dock. Do I hear a second?
Jay,
Yes.
I'd like to clarify that, please. There's no handrails on the boardwalk, correct? Because the dock is the floating portion, and
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, correct. Yeah, thank you for the recommendation. There'll be no handrails on the walking path, the pier walking out to the gangway. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Having heard a motion and a second, we'll do this by roll call vote. Alex?
Commissioner, could I make a quick question, please, as an abutter?
You have one quick comment, sure.
Yeah. So if you're going to approve this, from a condition standpoint, it is possible to lower the height to even lower, as long as the light transmission through those planks is better. And there are materials that are available so that it can make it of a grate, both made of metal and or plastic, that I think ought to be looked at to lower the height from 3 feet to 1 foot, making it a safer for those that are using it, and less obtrusive into the environmental aesthetics.
Okay, so I appreciate that comment. Thank you. I'm gonna relay that comment back to the engineer who's gonna be revising this plan anyway, and to the owners. Given now the fact that they will be the subject condition to the approval of the plan is that there be no handrails, I would strongly consider you looking at lowering that dock, lowering
Jay,
that. And yes.
Jay, Mr. Green already spoke to that, saying that the state regulations have a width and height ratio. So if he lowers it, it has to get even narrower, which becomes considerably more unsafe without rails on it. So, I mean, yes, he can consider it, but it already sounded to me like that would be problematic.
It'd be problematic on the state part.
Let's get the vote. Come on.
Okay.
Let's vote.
All right. So I would encourage the engineer to further evaluate that. Okay. Having heard a motion in a second, we'll do this by roll call vote. Alex?
Alex Cornish, yes.
Chris,
Chris McFarland, yes.
James,
James Roseback, yes.
Marianne,
Marianne Weatherall, yes.
Eric.
Yes.
No, Jay Pimpare, yes. Okay, so that vote passes 6-0. All right, congratulations. Thank you. I know it's been a long-winded night. We will look for a revised plan by 1 week from tonight, July 30th. If the plan is not submitted, then the conditions or approval will be null and void to the applicant, Mr. and Mrs. Tedeschi, and to Merrill Engineering. Thank you for hanging in here tonight.
Thank you for your time and commitment. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners.
Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Geez, I thought we'd be out of here a long time ago. We have a quick agent update and a chair update. Jeff, anything to update us on?
I was just going to remind everybody that I know we've talked about it before, and I know some of you had asked about it, but I just want to remind everybody that if you wanted to take any classes from MACC, all you have to do is email Lindsay, who is their admin, tell her what class you want to take, and she will send us an invoice to me, and then I'll give it to Angela, and then she'll get it paid. So I know some people had some issues with logging into MACC and actually booking the class themselves. So you can just overcome that by emailing Lindsay, and her contact information is on the MACC website. So if you go on there, find any classes that you want. They have recorded classes that have already been conducted, and they have ongoing webinars that are live. I would encourage any of you to take whichever ones you want and just have her send us the invoice, and then we will take care of it and get that paid.
Jeff, aren't we supposed to have a username, whatever it may be, I think?
Yes.
Is there a password, username, and all that involved?
Yes, I spoke with Lindsay too about that. If you don't know what it is, email her and she will tell you what it is, or she'll help you set that up if you don't already have one.
It's really easy to get home.
Yeah.
I'm actually taking one, I think, on Tuesday.
Yeah, but to Jeff's point, the quick and easy way, if you can't get it to get around the username, password, and Jeff, if you could actually just forward to the commission Lindsay's email address. I've done it. I took like 3 webinars in the past month. Just send her an email and say, I want to register for the webinar tomorrow, and she'll take care of it.
Got to hand feed us, Jeff.
Yeah. Okay. Anything else, Jeff?
I'm always scratching my head here for something to say. No, I don't really have much more.
I know we talk virtually like every day about all these issues that come up, and then when we have the updates here, it's like we don't have much to say because it's usually 11 o'clock at night, unfortunately. But we've already beat it to death or talked about it. So
I want to say thanks to Alex, since this is his last.
Yeah, I was getting around to that. If Alex, if you're still there, this is Alex's last meeting, and you went out with a bang, Alex.
Thank you, Alex.
I don't know how.
You vote, Alex. You broke the tie. Can we see your face, your ugly face? Come on.
I try. It doesn't work for some reason. My Verizon lets me down.
I don't know what happened to Alex. He's still.
I have a face for radio.
Yeah.
You're right. Yeah.
I don't know how long you've been on this commission, Alex. You're on when I started 7 years ago, and as everyone knows, we have term limits here, so people can only serve out 2 3-year terms, and I think Alex served out 3 3-year terms here. So
well done,
kudos
Alex.
to you. This is thanks for all of your help. I'd buy you a beer at Dooley's after this, Alex, but I'm 200 miles away, so it's going to be a little difficult.
Thanks for everyone. It's been a lot of fun.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex.
Good luck, Alex.
Yes.
And so with that, this upcoming Tuesday, special note to Eric and Kathleen. I just got word today that the reappointments will be done on Tuesday evening by the select board. So Kathleen, your 1-year term as an associate will have expired. So you reapplied. Thank you very much. So the select board will now consider you for a full-time position because our Alex is leaving, so there is an opening. So you would be a likely candidate. And then Eric, your first 3-year term is up. I know you have submitted an application. So if you could both make yourself available, I don't know what time it's going to be on Tuesday night, but the board typically, as you know how it goes, they may not even, they've asked me to participate. They may not even ask you to participate. They'll ask for a recommendation and for reappointment. And to that matter, we actually only have one other application in for an associate position. So we have 2 associate positions and 1 full-time position. One of those will be taken by Kathleen, hopefully. And we have 1 associate position looking to be filled now. So that's pretty much it. With this new reorg, anyone who wants to throw their name in the hat, I've already spoken to a couple of you now about being chair. It's a lovely position to be in. And I'm looking. I only have 1 year. I have 1 year left here, and I'm looking to be on the other side for the next year. We can talk about that, but we're going to do a reorg of the board, if not at the next meeting. The meeting after that, because I will share with you some information in the upcoming days, an application that will be in front of us. Let me ask, it's the utmost importance that people are at the next meeting, August 6th. We have an application that's going to be public noticed in the next day or 2 here that may be in front of us. Is there anybody that won't be here August 6th?
I may not be.
Okay, I really need to, we really need to know that of who will not be.
I can do it remotely.
Yeah.
If I'm not in the area, I can do it remotely.
Okay, great. All right. And stay tuned for an agenda and all the background material upcoming, if not tomorrow or early next week.
Alrighty.
That's really all I had. Yeah, thanks everybody for putting.
Wait.
Yes, sorry.
Oh, that's my son.
But what is he still doing up at 11 o'clock at night?
Because my husband's playing poker and no one can watch him. We were supposed to be done at 9. Is there any way that we can get some of these properties on a little bit earlier so I can take a look at them earlier in the week? Because it's lately I've been kind of rushed. I feel rushed lately to look at properties. And is there a chance to get them up or some of the documentation like a week earlier? I think right now bear with me. I'm gonna pull it up right now. We have up until this morning we had a relatively light agenda for August 6th. But so what we have on the agenda is just 29 Hickory Circle. 23 and 29 Hickory Circle. It's a quick little RDA. Yep. And they are actually on the OneDrive. If you check the OneDrive, Jeff, in addition to the issue that we talked about, which I'm going to talk about in a second here, 29 Hickory Circle, is there, outside of Rustway, is there anything on the agenda?
No, that's it so far.
Okay. All right. So, you know, I'm not going to talk about it. As of right now, the only thing on the agenda is 23 and 29 Hickory Circle. However, there may be another application that will be on the agenda, and we'll be able to discuss it a little bit more in detail. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
All right. Thank you. Is 29 Hickory Circle and 23 Hickory Circle, is there jackets on the OneDrive yet?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll go.
Yes. Yeah, they're fairly minimal projects. They're RDAs.
RDAs.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And all I will say is I would just remind everybody to familiarize yourself sometime next week with the Rustway application.
Okay.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Familiarize yourself with the Rustway application, And any documents will be put up on the OneDrive early next week, and then draft agenda will be out. And thanks everybody for sticking in here.
Thank you, Jay.
We have lost about 10
Thank
pounds.
you.
This summer.
Thank
All
you,
right.
Al.
By the way, motion to adjourn. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
I second it.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Good night.